Chair Dickey, we're ready to get started whenever you are.
Thank you. Make a land acknowledgement to get ourselves started here. I'd like to recognize the area we call the Fraser Valley Regional District has been home to Indigenous peoples for generations. There are 31 communities with reserve lands in the FERD's jurisdiction and as many as 69 groups with interests in the area. We honor our commitment to collaboration, inclusion, and reconciliation in our work today and call to order the December 2nd Electoral Area Services Committee of the Whole meeting. And nice to see that Director Castle is with us. Other side of the world. Welcome.
Hello from Okinawa, Japan.
Wow. Giving an international flavor to our committee. Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman.
Looking for approval of the agenda, addenda, and late items.
Motion, move Director Johnson, second Director Dixon. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Looking for a resolution to close the meeting.
Motion, Director Dixon, second Director Wardenberg. Any discussion, hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Okay, just give us 2 minutes to set up the room. Okay, Chair Dickey, we're ready to reconvene the open meeting.
Okay, I will look to staff to direct us.
Sure. So item 6.1 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Draft 2026 to 2030 Financial Plan for Electoral Area Services. And I will just turn things over to our Deputy CFO, Beth Klein.
Good morning, everyone. So thank you for joining us to review the draft 5-year financial plan. Just get the slide deck going here. Okay, so today we'll be talking about the Electoral Area Services draft financial 2026 to 2030 plans. This is for all of our areas. Looking at the day ahead of us, we are scheduled for most of the day. This slide deck is built in the same method as prior years with the intention of consistency. The agenda for today is to start with our overview. We'll talk about today's process, highlights, risks, consultation, timelines, and the background into how managers have put together their proposed budgets this year. After that, we'll go into assessment and taxation. This information is a little bit broken down this year. We've had quite a few information slides that we've moved onto our Have Your Say site rather than in the slide deck, just to talk about the assessment and how it works, as well as provincial taxation. After that, we'll go into assets and budget at risk and grant plans before we go into the majority of our day spent in the electoral area service budgets. So looking at the budget, as we work through another year budget presentations, as I said, we've reduced the slides a little bit just to focus on this financial plan. Any information you think is missing from last year's, it's on Have Your Say if you need to see it. I won't spend a lot of time on this one as we've seen it quite a few times before, but as an overall timeline, this is our formal financial planning timeline. So we don't talk about the summer where we're putting together our budgets in the fall as well. But looking today in December, this is where we're at right now. So looking at our electoral area budgets. After this meeting, we'll bring back any budgets that need to be incorporated with feedback or updated grant plans before we move into public consultation. So our public consultation will be after this meeting. We'll be uploading the slide decks for the public on Have Your Say, and we'll bring back any stats that we've obtained from there before we bring back the actual bylaw. The intention of this year's budget cycle is to bring back the full financial plan bylaw in February. In March, finance goes into our audit mode, and so we are hoping to adopt that budget well before. On the topic of consultation, the Have Your Say site that we have here provides information about the plan and provides an outlet for public feedback. It includes an archive section for our previous financial plans. Ultimately, the site ensures the Local Government Act requirements for consultation are met and exceeded. For this year, public consultation began in October with the first document of consultation being the EA priorities listing, which I did include in the agenda today. Staff continue to utilize this platform and promotion through social media to increase participation and transparency. Statistics and feedback will be brought back with the bylaw adoption. So today, to talk about this process. Today's process will be similar to prior year structure. We've built the slide deck in sections based on our financial statement captions. Staff are prepared to go through individual budgets that require direction or to talk about projects listed. However, we will look to the committee through the chair to provide direction on other service areas that you are looking to go into as well. The expectation of this meeting is that when we come to the end of each section, Lauren will bring up our resolution to move forward the budgets as presented. If there were any budgets throughout the discussions that require a referral back to staff, we will have a second resolution to make that motion. This does include budgets with CWF and GCF changes. The proposed grant plans that we have included in this slide deck are incorporated into the budget. And so if there is a change to that grant plan, it may impact that budget. That has to be brought forward again in January. I did have a slight typo in here. The public consultation begins December 2025, not 2026, as the agenda had said. Okay, so before I move on from logistics, I just want to pause for any questions on what today looks like.
I do not see any directors with questions.
Okay. Okay, so looking at budget creation. So the next two slides of overview are how the budget was created and how we are demonstrating why new or reoccurring initiatives are being brought forward. The four themes that outline the budget take into account the financial pressures taxpayers are facing. We are all seeing rising operating costs, construction costs, and inflation. However, as a local government, we are also seeing increased service demands, which impacts required staffing costs. As a regional district, there are limited opportunities to generate revenue. Over the past several years, our budget themes revolved around implementing cost controls, leveraging external funding, and prioritize essential services to keep budgets lean while meeting legislative and community expectations. The financial plan continues with those same themes, with a slight shift in mindset from not just gaining efficiencies, but to mitigate cost increases overall. This includes finding efficiencies in services, utilizing savings in a different way than originally intended, or bringing back contracts back to staffing in-house. Although we still work to find the most efficient use of resources, staff have also worked diligently to build up a true 5-year financial plan, intending to mitigate those cost increases now and in the future, while continuing to provide the expected service levels. If they cannot provide those same service levels without significant impacts, staff present those risks as a decision point in the presentation. As staff created the budgets, the communication was for budget managers to ensure they look at maximizing the use of external funding while ensuring to communicate risk levels where needed. These slides and these budgets are built to be transparent, and staff continue working towards increased engagement. Our hope is that as a taxpayer is going through their services received in the slide deck, they have the resources to understand why a decision was made. For this budget cycle, staff published a listing of the work plan initiatives directed by the East Priority session. Staff left this session understanding electoral area priorities, which are now built into the draft budgets and will be represented in the financial plan. If there are new initiatives this year, they are broken into proposed initiatives, either discretionary or mandatory, including the risk of not proceeding. Overall, the budget process has many risks aside from the specific risks within those service areas. We continue to see similar risks to prior years. We are seeing economic pressures, working through legislative changes. Staffing continues to be competitive across the Lower Mainland, and local governments required specialized skill sets for progress work plans, which includes 2 collective agreements to follow that were just renewed late this year. In general, a budget is a point in time. The budget has not been audited and 2025 values are not final. Because we have to have budgets adopted by March, staff are required to forecast cost and savings with the best information we have at the time. There are many times we work through a budget cycle expecting a construction cost of 4.2 as we have on the screen, and to see a larger increase partway through the year when we negotiate those contracts. We have policies in place for budget amendments and procurement standards. However, these are risks we have to consider when building these budgets and ensure we provide the committee with the staff's best information at the time. Budgets have been built intentionally lean for the 2026 financial plan, with new projects being recommended if required for service to continue or if requested through the EA priority session. Some budgets have discretionary items built in if they are requested. And for those ones, we will be providing risk levels if they're discretionary.
Thank you. Director Dixon has a question.
Well, thank you. On that last slide, so where you've got the BCPI is 4.2% and CPI is 2.6%, I'm assuming that those are part of the numbers that were used to calculate the increases, along with the new contractual obligations. Are you able to provide me with the percentage for the new contractual obligations for, I guess we're catching up a little bit, aren't we, for 2026? Because it's a 3-year contract, is it not?
Yeah, starting in 2025. 5.75 for 2025, 4 and 3.75. There we go.
4 and 3?
4 and then 3.75.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to assessment and taxation. So as I mentioned in the opening, we've removed some of the graphic slides. At a high level, the FERD services are a proportion of the overall tax bill for provincial and municipalities. The province of BC produces the rural tax bills and creates the class rates through regulation. In addition, BC Assessment has a responsibility for property assessment, which are the basis of taxation. We have updated this section with the latest property assessment values. However, the service areas include averages and estimates based on the 2025 tax roll. So we're comparing dollars to dollars rather than estimated rates. Looking forward to how we collect revenue. So we have 4 different types of fees that we break down our financial plan into. So they're on the screen in front of you. We have requisition, which is a type of property tax calculated using property assessment values, a parcel tax, which is the same cost to each parcel, a user fee, which is paid through utilities or an invoice based on bylaw, and then fees by agreement, so a formal agreement for someone that uses the service. Throughout the slide deck, if there's a mixture of user fee and different tax types, we break those down within that service area. I just want to talk about some things that aren't included in our estimates at the end of the slide deck. So at the end of October, we were notified of changes to the pipeline valuation for 2 jurisdictions. It was very high level information. Since then, we have received some preview data from assessment, which is not 100% complete yet. So a note from BC Assessment is that they're about 75% up to date right now. They were entering up until this week. And so the information we have in the next few slides is going to change by the time the tax roll comes out in the new year. We were expecting a change for Sunshine Valley for the residential class, but at that time of the notification of the pipeline, we weren't informed of any other big changes. Now that we have that data from the beginning of November, we are seeing that there are changes in residential based on market rates, but it shows a huge variation across the FERD. So it's not consistent for us to show.
So if I might, these pipeline valuations, we continue to have no estimate of the impact of that. I believe it's going to affect Director Damos in my areas the most. And we're just operating blind. It could be another 10% on our tax bill. It could be 20. It could,
Sure, I can speak to that a little bit. So when we got the assessment data in at the beginning of November, they did include those estimated changes in pipeline. And so the slides that you'll see in the next few slides do include that change. However, it hasn't been confirmed that they will be moving forward yet. So it still has to come back from the ministry. As of Thursday, the BC assessment contact that we have hadn't heard back at that point or wasn't communicating anything at that point. So although it is included in the slide deck as an impact, it could potentially change still.
So when we spoke, I'm guessing 2 weeks ago, staff wasn't able to give us an estimate of the impacts of this. Are you saying that has changed?
We have preview data. So like I said, assessment said they're about 75% there with their data. It's not 100%. So we can look at some impacts that they've provided, but it could potentially change still.
But at least we've got something to operate under. So could you please focus on that? Because I haven't seen my area, the impact of this on my area explained to me.
Yeah, we'll go through it on the next couple slides here.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. So looking overall at the entire electoral areas, the pie chart shows what that means for class shifts here. So in prior years, Area H has had residential percentage of 96%, and that is the same again this year. Looking towards electoral Area B with the preview roll, Area B is the lowest again, but there's an increase of 6% for residential. Overall, for the entire area, it's showing an increase or a shift of 1% from utilities to residential. So this is the information that we've received from BC Assessment. The information that we get from BC Assessment at this time of year does not go into granular details of the service level. So we get very high level analysis of overall class assessment. We don't know the folio count. We don't get that service level that we need to actually show an analysis on what that impact will be at a granular level. What we can say is that for these two areas, Area A and Area B, Area A was showing no class change. We have spoken to assessment about theirs, and they are looking at revaluing the area before the completed roll comes out in January. And so they're expecting some change in residential, I believe. Area B, this includes their estimates on the pipeline impacts. So when we look at that shift, there's a 7% shift from utilities class to the residential class at 6% and business and other at 1%. So this data hasn't been incorporated into those estimates that you see just because we are expecting it to change. Going towards Area D, E, and H. So with that pipeline information included, Area D is showing a 2% shift from utilities to residential and business. Area E is showing a 3% shift from light industry to residential, and Area H does not have any class shifts in this preview roll. What I can say after talking to assessment is there is increases for non-market change. However, the market change has decreased about, I think, 1 to 2% across the Lower Mainland is what they had said. For this one, the pipeline shift is almost balanced out by the change in market rate for Area D.
Yeah, excuse me, Director McElhaney, please.
Can you go back? Thank you. So in electoral area E, can you explain the shift, 3% shift from light industry? Like what, did we lose something or?
Looking, so like I said, we don't get folio numbers, so I don't know if we've dropped any properties yet. I'm gonna look into it before the completed roll comes out. For the, I believe that it's mostly market rate. But like I said, I don't have folio count, so I can't confirm if there's been properties completely moved from one class to another. But I can certainly get more information why.
Thank you, because we're mostly, pretty much mostly residential as it is, so
Yep, so I can find out what happened with that light industry for sure.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, and so going to areas C, F, and G. So a little bit different than the south side of the river. There is area C saw a 1% shift from residential to utilities. Area F saw a 1% shift from residential to utilities as well. And area G did not see any class change. Okay, so this slide is important for any shared services. So how most of our services work, unless there's a formula built into the bylaw, is they're split based on assessed value. And so if you have an area such as 102 where all electoral areas pay into it, the split is based on that total assessed value. And so what we can see here with the preview data is that area B dropped the total area assessment by 1.5%, and it shifted 1% to area C and 0.5% to area F. So that's that overall picture.
So if I might, as Ms. Klein points out, this is an important slide. And I can be corrected if I am incorrect, but in effect, what happens here is areas B, C, and F get a very large discount on the shared services because the residential taxpayers get a very large discount in those areas because the utilities make up such a big portion of the tax base. Would that be correct, Ms. Klein?
Just a small correction is that area B has decreased 1.5 and area C and F have now taken up that decrease. So they've actually increased.
Right, but the blue area is the discount that the residential taxpayers get because those are the contributions from the utilities.
Yes, for area B for sure. But when we look at this way, area F and C actually had a 1% shift to utilities. So the utilities in their area would pick up more of that increase.
But the point I'm trying to make is area B, what the number is something like 65, 70% is utilities.
Yes. Yeah.
Area C is a little less than 50%.
Yes, I see what you're saying is that they are utilities.
F is perhaps 35%. So it ends up that areas like area D and area H, which have relatively smaller utilities and very high assessments, end up paying a big portion of those shared costs.
Correct. The utilities will pick up those costs for sure.
They will pick up the costs in the other areas, but for ourselves, it's the residential taxpayer that is picking up those costs.
Yes, I think the one piece for these shared services is that when we split those costs, each residential, whether you're in area B or D or E, will pay the same tax rate. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Director Davidson.
So just further on this, I think the discussion is a little bit contrary to my understanding. So if you're trying to look at this and say that some EAs get a greater discount than others because of utilities, my understanding is, well, it depends. Because if we're looking at an EA-wide service area, it's the aggregate of all these utilities that feed into that tax base. And so we all benefit from them equally if it's an EA-wide service area. And on that note, when you're looking at a change in pipeline taxation practices, we all suffer equally when it comes to an EA-wide service area. When you start digging into specific, service areas specific to given EAs, it's different. Then you are getting into specific, one area is getting more of a discount from utilities than others, but for the EA-wide level, we all share and suffer alike on it, as far as I can understand. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so like I said, the residential rates, if you're in a shared service, they all pay the same tax rate. But when you look at total requisition dollars, then it shows a higher dollar value in a specific area overall. But you're right that the residents pay the same tax rate whether you're in, doesn't matter what area you're in, and
Right.
that utilities picks up that difference.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dixon.
So I'm a little lost on this one now. Okay. So the way I see this, my area in particular compares with probably Area C. In that, as far as assessed value, is that part accurate?
It depends what you're looking at, I think. I just need more.
So what I'm struggling with is Area H, and has no tax breaks. Really, Area E and G are pretty small too, it looks like there. And so how does that impact my area? So the way I see it, kind of, if my area as far as dollars is paying twice as much as others, if not 3 times, sometimes 4, depending on which the area is. And I look at some of those slides that are coming up, and I'm trying to reconcile that, like, because those that have the blue, good on them. My area doesn't. So how does that impact my area? Because I feel like my residents, if there's $1,000, are paying 9,600, 960 of it out of their pockets. Like, I don't know how to put that in a scenario.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at it from a dollar perspective, a total requisition dollar perspective, your area would pay more than Area A, for instance, because they're a small assessment base. But when you're looking at the individual taxpayer, so a residential taxpayer, your tax rate on your bill would be the same as a resident in Area A. When you look at that tax bill, when it's tax or it's assessment based, we can see that Area A has a smaller assessment overall. But if you had a house that was, I'm just throwing out a number, $500,000 cost, they would pay the same whether they're in Area C or Area H. So that tax rate is important to understand, I think. But the overall requisition, yes, it shows much bigger on yours because you have a higher assessment.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead, Director Dixon.
So I understand that part of it. But what I'm struggling with is, what's the advantage of the blue then? So if you needed to collect, here's how I'm looking at this. If you needed to collect $200,000 from Area C, say, 50% of that would come from the residents, and 50% of it would, more or less, would come from the industry and utilities and business. So the residents only have to pay 50% of whatever you're requisitioning, whereas mine would pay 96% of it. So that's where my thinking is. And is that wrong?
I think it's.
If I might jump in, I think what I'm hearing is that there's a perception that the utilities property class is providing a discount.
Yes.
But in actual fact, each of you represents all taxpayers in all classes in your area. Some of you have more residential taxpayers, while others have taxpayers in a variety of classes. So I think it's correct to say that more residential taxpayers are paying into a particular shared service from Area H, whereas in Area C, there's a greater range of types of taxpayers that contribute to that shared service. So the focus for you is more on the residential taxpayer because 96% of your taxpayers are residential.
Thank you, Director Dixon. So, staff, I understand this is complicated and I do not envy your position here, but there is a slide, electoral area wide services, average residential tax 2026. There are no page numbers, so for me to find that is not the easiest thing to do.
Sorry, what slide were you looking at?
Yeah, it's called EA-wide services, average residential tax 2026.
Like this one or in the tax file at the very back?
Like I say, there's no
Dr. Dickey, we all have page numbers in our agendas, so I'm just not sure. Maybe we should try to get you a different copy.
It's a table that says EA-wide services, average residential tax 2026. And it pertains to this discussion around the sharing of services. Whoa. War and peace.
We can't see them.
Thank you.
Director Dickey, your copy may actually have numbers on it. I'm just noting that the number is quite small. It's actually in the bottom of the slide where the blue stripe is.
Well, it is too small for a 70-year-old to see.
Our apologies.
Are you looking at these? This look? These ones are broken out by electoral area, but EA-wide services financial summary.
Okay. Anyways. Okay, so rather than what I'm seeing from the data that I picked up from these slides is, for instance, so this is EA-wide services. The average residential tax, which is the number right there, 615.63 for area D. That number for area B would be $253. So less than half. There it is, 253.
Yes, so that
Right.
comes back to the overall, it's the average residential taxpayer. So
Right.
every area has a different average based on the assessment in their area. But yes, the tax rate is then applied to that average
Right.
assessed value on a home. And then this calculation is presented that way.
So area B, the average residential tax 253, my area is 615, area H is 618, so less than half. Area C is 361 instead of this 615 number that areas D and H pay. And area F is 376 instead of that 615. So pardon me?
Sure, I can speak to the average cost. So I think that's one piece in this calculation that I believe Dr. Davidson had talked about including is the average home cost.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at area D in 2025, the average residential assessment in your area is just over $1 million. When you look at area B, the average residential home is for $425,000. And so that's that big impact and that's that big change between the two areas.
So this is directly related to the average home assessment?
Yes, that average residential tax is, yes.
So area F's assessments are 60% of areas D and H?
Yeah, so area F's average residential home in 2025 was just over $650,000.
Okay. Thank you. That helps.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Director Davidson.
Yeah, just to reiterate, my way I look at it is that when it comes to an EA wide service area, it doesn't matter where the blue is. We all benefit equally. Everything else, the differences are all just based 100% to set differences in assessed value, nothing to do with where the utilities are physically located.
Okay, so building on what Director Davidson has said, are there instances in, for instance, electoral area B, where the utilities really do benefit that area in contrast to the average electoral area?
No. Garbage is a good example. Yeah, it's here.
I'll take a shot at that one. So through the chair, a good example of a service that benefits from that utility class would be the Area B garbage service area. In electoral Area B, outside of Sunshine Valley, we provide curbside garbage collection at the same level that you would find in a municipality. So basically, it's if you lived in District Hope or City of Chilliwack or Abbotsford, our program is exactly the same in electoral Area B. And the only way that we can do that is because we have that that utility class that pays into that area wide service, and it in a way offsets that cost for our residents.
Right.
So that's a good example.
So I've never seen a description of how many budgets fall into that category.
No more. I got one.
It's not just me that's flummoxed. It's nice to see that it's only me that's flummoxed.
If I may, if you'd like further analysis in that, we're going to have to take that back to staff. That's kind of going beyond the scope of what we came prepared to talk to today. But I think certainly any services that are providing in any of the electoral areas where the utilities are contributing, the residents are going to get a benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. The just debate about how things are shared is an important debate, I would think. So that would be really helpful, I think, if we could get a definition of that. I've been here a few years now and still a student. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. I apologize for complicating the situation.
Okay, so moving into our assets at risk. Okay, so for this section, we've been doing this for a few years. We've identified a number of service area budgets or assets at risk and included descriptions. So these are budgets where there is a financial risk greater than more common risks such as inflation. The FVRD strives to maintain its assets in good condition and ensure there's adequate funding available for scheduled as well as unplanned maintenance, repair, and replacement. So should a service area have a need greater than budget in a particular year above the savings balance accumulated at that time, the budget will actually end in a deficit. And by legislation, we are not permitted to carry a deficit. So in those cases, we would need to increase taxation in the following year to recover all of the deficit. So as you can imagine, it could be dire for some taxpayers. And so through these slides, we are seeking to notify the committee of the budgets that have potential to become a dire situation due to low savings or poor condition infrastructure. Staff continue to find the right level of funding to avoid these potentially devastating financial shockwaves by having slow and predictable tax increases through our asset management journey to improve those contingency plans and inform the right level of taxation. Looking at the asset management program, our prior strategic plan included initiatives that ensured the FBRD is managing risk and financial implications to best serve property owners. I have a list on the screen of the asset management initiatives that we are going through. So we have done an evaluation. We've adopted an asset management policy as well as a strategy to support that policy. And we are currently working towards creating a capital reserve fund policy to support contributions to savings. These next two slides illustrate service areas that have been identified as assets at risk. Well, the EA directors this year have supported, in prior years, have supported replacement reserve contributions that are in line with expectations of requirements in the future. It's only moves the dial. It doesn't, sorry, just 1 second. It doesn't eliminate the risk in 1 year. So looking back over the past few years, we have made improvements every year. We are moving in a positive way. And so this year we were able to actually remove 2 more assets at risk and downgrade the last remaining red to an amber. On your screen here, we can see the combined E911. That one is a regional budget and will come forward in the January presentation for more information. The Boston Bar North Bend garbage landfill. So we are continuing to increase savings in this budget. As legislative requirements, we are required to build up those reserves for closures. Next, we have the Popcom sewer. So this one, there is development in the area that is not progressed as fast as originally forecasted. So we've had to delay adding in those contributions to savings. This is still considered an asset at risk. North Bend Water is the one we've downgraded from red to orange. So reserves are now being replenished in the financial plan, and we're close to covering any large scale potential failure with savings. Yale Water was kept at amber this year. There was a reservoir refurbishment completed, and work continues on that area. Looking at the 2 on the screen, so the drainage in East Popcom. This year, the engineering team worked towards merging the 3 drainage budgets. That has not yet been adopted. Once that is adopted, this will be removed from the asset at risk list. DeRoche Water. This budget was kept at orange as well. We are also close to covering any large scale failure without a sharp increase in taxes. So what the Morris Valley sewer budget was previously on this list, it has been removed as savings are continuing to be replenished. And the North Colta sewer was removed as well this year. The new wastewater treatment plant was completed in 2025, and taxation will be built around the new asset management profile.
Oh, excuse me, Director Wardenberg. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just want a confirmation because I see it here and I see it on the other slide, so I might as well ask the question now. Reserves and surpluses. So a reserve, that's the way I understand it, just correct me if I'm wrong, is that the surplus, does the surplus get rolled over every year? Is that what it is? And then do you take a portion of that and put it in reserves, or how do you do it on, you know, I guess it depends on the budget itself, but you know, how does that work?
Sure.
Is that how it works?
Yes, I can speak to that. So reserves are based on bylaw. So a bylaw is set on our reserve account that states what we can use that money for. And so depending on the budget, we would put away to reserves for capital replacement or major maintenance replacement. Whereas surplus is savings in a year. And so those are used for general operating costs. There's no bylaw tied to them, but we can't budget to use a reserve for an operating cost. You'd have to use surplus for that, for any increases that way. So it depends on the budget.
So just for clarity then, but your surplus, so if you have a year, in this year, let's say you have a surplus in an account, does that just roll over into next year's budget? Is that how that works? Or sometimes do you take a portion of that surplus, or do you always budget for strictly reserves?
We depends on the budget, so we can budget for both, but typically if you have a savings in a year, it goes into surplus. Unless you're planning to take it from reserves, then it just stays in reserves.
Okay, so as the budgets come along, it says taking from reserve or surplus, so it doesn't really distinct one or the other.
Yeah, so we add that balance of reserve surplus on the side just so you can see where that level is. But yeah, you're right. We do combine them in the slide deck, so that's why we have that separate balance going on the right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, going into grant plans. So for this section, we have two grants that we are going to talk about. So we have our CWF, our Community Works Fund, and our Growing Communities Fund. So just a reminder on the grant criteria at a very high level. The Community Works Fund agreement was signed in 2024 and is active till 2034. Some program highlights for this one is that it is a capital funding or capital project funding, no rolling stock except for fire trucks, as well as capacity building. We are allowed to use the money for feasibility and detailed design. There's no fixed asset or land acquisitions for this funding. And additional reporting requirements were added for projects that receive over $25,000, as well as funds have to be spent within 5 years of receipt, not just allocated. To add, this fund is this one is something that receives money every year. UBCM release a list, I believe it's up to 5 years of the funding that we'll receive. GCF is our Growing Communities Fund. This was a one-time funding provision. And so it's similar to CWF. It can be used for planned infrastructure and amenity projects. However, it should be enabling community growth. Feasibility and other early stage development is eligible. Land acquisition is eligible under this program. Financial reporting requirements are also required, including any interest earned on the fund that sits with us. And again, it's a one-time payment, but it has to be spent by March 31st, 2028. So the FERD is required to fully allocate the grant funds to specific projects, and we report that out to UBCM at the end of the year. The projects previously approved for funding were included in part of the financial planning process, and we are showing those proposed projects in the area slides. So I won't go through everyone's projects or everyone's slides individually, but I do want to talk about what this looks like. So the summary is the first slide for every area. And so what it shows is that this is the opening balance before any committed projects that haven't started yet. So we have Community Works on the left, Growing Communities on the right. If staff are proposing a new project within this financial plan, it's at the bottom as a newly proposed project. Coming down here where you see this red, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're in a deficit for this fund. It just means that you have spent future year funding within this grant plan. Going into the 5-year, this one is just for Community Works because we continue to receive money over those 5 years. So you can see at the top here is this rolling opening balance and the new funding received, What is not included in here is any interest earned because it depends on how much you spend in the year. Again, we've reiterated what is committed as well as the newly proposed projects. Anything that has started or in progress isn't necessarily included in this. It's still worked on in the background. And maybe instead of going through every area, I will pause and just ask that if there is areas that we would like to look at, we can certainly do that.
Director Wardenberg.
Yeah, I'm just looking at a direction for process here. Because area C, the new proposals are generally all related to new equipment for the fire department, which is a new criteria I understand under the CAF eligibility. But it's a lot different than what it was last year. So as we go through this, community works funds, there's a couple budgets that I'm going to talk about, and I'm just thinking that I'll talk about that and how that relates to this when we go through those budgets.
Yeah, that sounds great. And we can always come back to this slide at the end as well.
We'll do it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wardenberg. Ms. Klein.
Sorry, just
Director Davidson.
just not looking at any one specific line item here. I know a lot of this is just about allocating and reporting at this point. What is, so when you see something here, you look at it and think, is this actually gonna happen or not? And what is the process by seeing a line item here for essentially reporting purposes versus it actually happening?
Yeah, I think the important distinction is this year we're getting closer to that spend by date, especially for growing communities. It's 2028, beginning of 2028. We're also looking at a 5-year financial plan. So you have quite a few fire trucks or trucks on your list, and those require early ordering most of the time, and so it impacts the entire 5-year financial plan, not just 2026. And so what we've done with these specific budgets, so the North Fraser Fire, is we were able to reduce the contributions to reserve to fund these trucks over the next 5 years plus.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at, like in the past, a lot of these things have simply, like for example, truck liquid waste. Was there essentially as a placeholder. So when we're looking at these things, I'm just trying to understand procedurally, when does a placeholder become a reality? How are we aware of that? What's the process? Is this we're just left to look for something on an agenda where staff's looking for a purchase approval? I'm just trying to get my mind around that process by which these placeholders actually become reality. And how do we know?
Sure. I think that for your area, they're not placeholders at this point. They're built into the budget to be spent. But at over $100,000,
okay,
procurement comes back to board for decision for sure.
And I think if I can just further add, I think with the new requirements under these programs, staff are certainly trying to work more closely with the electoral area directors to ensure that there are realistic projects that are being earmarked. And we are coming to you in an open and honest way, whether or not that these are realistic. And so if there are conversations that need to be had where there's a project that's being put forward from a community where we don't know that we're going to realistically be able to accomplish it, we're going to be advising you of that during the process.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you, Director Davidson. And further to this issue, this 5-year spend directive, I've seen a number of plans in place which are not progressing at the speed which we had expected. Just want to make sure once again that there's no danger of those monies falling off the table if they get delayed.
We haven't been informed of that at this point.
As I understood it, as long as the plan is in place, that that would be acceptable.
In the contract, it specifically says that we have to spend it by 5 years, within 5 years. So in previous contracts, there was no spend by date for CWF. There is as of 2024.
So is there elsewhere in the province where people have said, okay, these monies now disappeared because,
I think because it's as a part of the new agreement as of 2024, we haven't really hit that point.
so it'd be 2029 when that would,
2029 would be the 5 years. Yeah.
yep, thank you. Director McElhaney.
So kind of going along with that, so say, we've ordered trucks and there, we know with delays and different things. So if we're prepaid and have it ordered or things like that, there's workarounds for that, so we can make sure that the money is spent or accounted for the grant. I would think.
I mean, yeah, we don't know. We've not come across that, and
if I can further that, I think that that's rational and logical, and I think that that's a good way to approach it. I suspect that if you were planning on spending money on a project and you hadn't even started working on it at all, and the deadline arrived, that's a different conversation than if you have placed an order for a truck and it hasn't arrived yet and you haven't paid the final invoice. I think that there's quite a bit in between there as well. That likely UBCM would be using some tests to determine whether a project was substantially completed, and they may give you an extension to that 5-year spend. We can't speak to that because that's not what the contract states, but we would be moving forward on the assumption that there is the potential risk that you could lose those funds. So we want to make sure that any projects and opportunities that are being put forward are realistic and likely to meet that deadline.
Thank you, Director McElhaney. Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for area H, just to confirm, it's the first summary slide. It's got red on the bottom, the one before it, yes.
Oh,
or mine has red.
Yeah, it's just covered by the.
Fine. Okay. Does that mean I'm overspent? Because when I look at the other slide, it doesn't look that way.
No,
Okay.
it's that line is just to show that you have allocated your funding for spending. So it's not a bad thing for the red. That's why we show it here, so that it just shows that you've spent in future years, future funding that you will receive.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I do that. And
Okay. Any other questions on grants before we go into our budgets? Okay. Just gonna switch my slide deck here. Okay. So on the screen in front of you is our EA area-wide budgets. These are the budgets that have most electoral areas. You can see that 256 EA animal control does not have everyone, but it has a vast majority. So it's just showing the actual dollar requisition between 2025 and 2026. And so we can certainly go through these individual budgets today.
Okay, maybe we could back up in discussion. I would feel remiss if I did not annually point out the increase to budgets such as 102, 246,000. That's, as I calculated, an 11.65% increase. I believe that's the fourth year of close to 12% increases. I would suggest that is not sustainable, and that will end. The question is when and under what circumstances. But if anyone would like to enter into a debate on that, I would suggest they might want to look at the geometrical progression of 12% increases, and that is not something that can continue. But I appear to be a solitary person with that view, so I will turn things to other directors. Director Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So Yeah, geometric escalation is never sustainable long term. Short term, um, I certainly don't have a challenge with it. When I look at, for example, the EA wide, um, let me rewind a little bit. It's always geometrical. It's never a reduction unless you're trying for 0%. It's either 1% or more, which is by definition geometric. It's just a question of how much. I always translate this back to actual dollars. If I look at the EA wide hit, for example, on area F, that's given this total hit. It's an increase of, for the average assessed value, about, I think, $30. If we were to cut that percentage in half, it would be $15. And if you're looking at an asset for area F, it's worth on average $650,000. That one-time increase of $15 to $30 a year is today nominal. If you're carrying on with these kinds of increases year after year after year, it may become significant, but it's to me certainly not significant this year. Thank you.
I would maybe disagree with the word maybe. It will become significant. But anyways, and I point out once again, areas that have much lower assessments, this has had much less impact on them. So, Director Dixon.
Oh, I just feel like you shouldn't feel like we're all alone. I do look at that, and for me, it seems it has been several years where that budget 102 has been increasing 10, 11%. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But the truth is, I don't know what to do about it, and or how to, how to manage that. I think part of it is every time we ask for a new project, I'm guessing part of it comes in there, or more work to do, or those type of scenarios all would probably fall into 102. Is that accurate? It covers kind of everything in the electoral area.
It is an administration budget for the electoral areas. We can go through that slide deck for sure and look at the details what's in there, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Director Dixon. Director McElhaney.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that we're in really, really tough economic times for trying to do more with less, and residents are really feeling the pinch as well. With taxes. I know our taxes have gone up substantially every year. And I mean, I guess when I'm looking at this, I think 12% just seems a little high when we're looking at some of the things. And I know part of it is the contract, the new contract. But when I put forward budgets, in my experience in that, those are the usually you expect a little, myself speaking for us, a little bit of pushback in that. So what are for administration, where is the wiggle room if there was to be like even a 2% decrease? Because if we keep doing this and it compounds year after year, it's not sustainable. And
Dickie, could I make a suggestion? I think Ms. Klein was hoping to present that budget to you in its entirety, so perhaps we could just ask her to run through it to give you the detail on that budget.
Good. That's a good idea. Is that okay, Director McElhaney?
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, so looking at our navigation screen, so every section will have this navigation to list out which budgets are in that section, and I have bolded some that we'll go through today. So the first one will be the 102, so we can go into that right now. So the purpose of this service area is to provide administration expenses to the 8 electoral areas. That includes the elected officials' fees and expenses, the election costs for electoral areas, and the administration for the electoral area wide, as well as the DeRoche Center. So key highlights of this plan, this financial plan specifically, is we are continuing to use surplus to soften requisition. We have increases over the 5-year that are largely due to operational costs. And the taxation is segmented to EAs based on board resolution. So not everyone will have the same increase depending on the cost of that resolution. So just to touch on that a little bit, talk about that breakdown first. So our director expenses that are common, that are taxed to everyone in this service, are the EASC meals, travel, or EASC meeting, travel, and meals. For one UBCM delegate, so either the chair of EASC or whoever has been designated in that person's place, one FCM delegate, one UBCM forum delegate, any EASC directed attendance at workshops or conferences, public hearings, strategic planning meetings, and communication expenses like your cell phone or internet usage. So that's taxed to everyone in the area. How it differs between areas are based on the actual weekly travel to the FBRD office and any meals that go with that service. Conference attendance aside from the chair of EASC, so for UBCM, FCM, UBCM Forum, and LM, LGA, that would be taxed directly to that area if that director attended. Workshops and training opportunities and interconstituency travel. So how that the calculation that is at the back of the slide deck works is that any taxation for 2026 is based on what was spent in 2025. So it's estimated, as I said, we're not finished our 2025 year yet. And then all of the common are based on the assessed value. Looking at the 5-year horizon for this service area, there is 2 projects are listed for the 5 years, 2026 and 2030. We will be doing the local elections, estimated around 75,000. And 2027 strategic planning, a portion of it will be in this budget for 10,000. So those are projects that are in the 102. I'll just pause on this slide before we get into the details because it's the first financial one we are looking at today. So as I was saying in your question, Director Wardenberg, over on your right, you have a cumulative balance every year of what's in each surplus or reserve if there's a reserve. This service has a general admin surplus and we have an EA elections surplus. And so any overages in the elections, we can use this EA admin surplus for. Looking at this service, at the very top, you have your member tax requisition. That's that number that we were just looking at in the table a couple slides before. Any grants that come in, rental income for the DROSH office, any use of savings or surplus. And so as I highlighted in that first slide, this service is using savings to soften the tax increase. And so what you would call kicking the can down the road or the increases coming in the future are partially based on the fact that we're using surplus to soften operational increases year over year. And so naturally, we will eventually run out of surplus. And so we have to start tapering that down, or else if you do run into a scenario where you need that extra surplus and you run into a deficit, you have to tax in the next year, which causes a sharp increase. So that's one line to pay attention to. Of course, when looking at this previous slide, there's only 2 projects in this budget. The rest is operating. So we have a consulting and legal line down here. Last year, 2025 was 170, trying to keep that down low. But of course, legal costs continue to rise. Operating expenses, this includes that election cost in here, which is funded by surplus and a mixture of surplus and taxation.
Good. So that's the big jump in the operating expenses, the election expense.
The election expenses using surplus, so 75, we're bringing in from requisition. And so every year we put away a little bit of money for future elections. So it's a mixture of savings and taxation.
But on the expense side, the operating expenses goes from 48,000 to 124.
Yeah.
That's reflecting the election?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. I just point out perhaps the director's fees at 333,000. That's 13% of the budget. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, directors, any further discussion? Seeing none, we will move forward. Oh, Director Adamo.
Just apologies. I have to scoot out for about 45 minutes to deal with my patient. Ms. Kinnaman can explain what's going on in my household, and I'll be back in about 45 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Director Wardenberg.
Yeah, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but or if I'm out of order here. But I looked at last year's budget, and the overall surplus, the admin savings surplus, was for 2025. In last year's budget was for 88,470, and this year's surplus or savings is 437,000.
Yep.
Big difference. Just
Yeah, sure. So the 2025 is a forecasted value. So there could be savings in vacant positions, there could be savings in other operating costs. I'd have to look into it and provide you some update.
Thank you, Director Wardenberg. Ms. Klein.
Okay, so our next slide deck is for the Grant and Aid program. So this Grant and Aid program is to support cultural, environmental, charitable, and recreational service activities. This is an ongoing application process, typically all year. I just wanted to highlight this program as next year being an election year. The intake for this program will only be until May. So up until the May board, and then we will break until after the election. And so after that, it will be December will be when we can bring back grant needs to board. For this financial plan, we have budgeted for the same value that we had in 2025. So if there is a wish to increase or decrease, we can certainly do so. How the tax on this works is that we only tax for what has been spent in the year. So on the screen on the far right column, you can see 2025 grant and aid requests that have been funded. This includes November's fund. There's 2 grant and aids in November. It includes this. So yeah, so area H is the 15,000. So that includes the November one. Yeah.
Director McElhonick.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if area E, if it should be broken out, the 2 different cleanup and then the regular grant and aid. I'm not sure, but because they are kind of distinct and one can't be used for the other.
Yeah, so I didn't include the cleanup fund in this slide. It's just grant and aid, but I can send you a balance of what it is. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it looks like a lot more, but they're actually 2 distinct. So it's not the same grant and aid funds that everyone else has. It's that plus the way it's showing here, right?
This one's specifically just the grant and aid program, so it doesn't actually include the cleanup fund.
Okay, so it just seems high, 57,000.
So I can speak to that. That column is just the maximum that you are potentially able to go up to. So you could go up to 57,000, but we budgeted for 10. And so you've only spent 6,500. So that's all we'll tax for.
Okay. I thought it was because of the high number. I just mistakenly thought it was referring to the other one, but that's fine. Thank you so much. Okay.
It's interesting. Thank you, Director McElhonick. Ms. Klein.
Okay. This one is for area B. Maybe we'll circle back to it after. Just because Director Adamo has stepped out, there is an option for him to decide. And so I'll propose that we'll come back to the resolution for this section when he's back. If that's okay. Okay, so moving into our protective services section. Protective services, this is the full list of our fire protection within the protective services section. There is two separate sections. And so as you can see, I bolded most of the fire protection services. The reason that we're going to be going through most of these is there is projects to discuss. So I will jump into first 211. Before that, we'll talk about fire underwriters. So fire underwriters is helps the insurance industry establish appropriate fire insurance rates. So the benefit of meeting this requirement includes positive impacts to property insurance rates for residents. And the risk of not approving these mandatory requirements, some mandatory requirements within each budget may result in a reduction in this into the service. Looking at our Boston Bar North Bend Fire Department for Electoral Area A, the purpose of this service area is for fire protection for Boston Bar, North Bend, and Boston Bar First Nations. Boston Bar Fire Department provides fire protection and informal first responder and road rescue services. The key highlights of this plan are focused on equipment replacement plans that have been updated for 2026. There has been significant increases in maintenance and equipment cost, and we are performing building and equipment audits. So there is specific recruitment and retention works in progress, as well as asset management planning for this service. Budget risks and challenges. For this service area, there is a department membership that is low, and because of insufficient membership, membership is required to recognize the halls for underwriters. Funding challenges to maintain the apparatus replacement as well for the fire underwriters grade. And again, the mandatory initiatives are essential for maintaining the level of service, safety, and assets. So the priority for this budget is to maintain the fire underwriters recognition. So to do that, it's replacing aging apparatus and aged apparatus and increasing membership. Looking at these proposed projects, so this is our mandatory project listing. And so you can see the reasoning on the right as to why we are proposing to do these projects. Happy to answer any questions on these. We've included cost and the funding source that's been included in the financial plan. Okay, no questions, I can keep going. Second slide is our discretionary slide. So there's two on here, the 2026 professional inspections and flexi quiz, both low risk levels. And again, can answer any questions.
Flexi quiz? Quick definition of what a flexi quiz is?
It's a program for, I believe, training that the fire service can have. It's $330 a year. It's remote training, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dixon.
Thank you. Thank you for this. I just going to ask this question now because I believe that professional inspections is on all of our slides. Maybe not everybody. I think it was. And now I'm seeing that it's discretionary. I know we've already talked about it, but what can you refresh me? I guess what my question is, what is the risk of not doing these inspections on our hulls? And the other one is, what's the risk of doing it?
Sure. Maybe I'll ask Stacy to answer that.
Sure. Well, I don't think there's any risk of doing it. The risk of not doing it is that we are trying to get the best plan that we can in terms of facility and equipment maintenance and replacement. So some of the equipment and other types of things throughout that you find in the hall, we don't have a good understanding of in some halls the maintenance that have been done throughout the past 10 or 20 years on certain piece of equipment. We need to understand when that replacement is recommended. So in some cases, it might that assessment might extend our replacement estimation. and then sometimes it might reduce that. So basically it's getting a really good handle on and a professional opinion on when certain maintenance items should be conducted.
Absolutely.
And is it a one-off or every 5 years or annual? Or
In this budget, we're just suggesting it to be a one-off.
thank you.
Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I just was wondering, so professional inspections, who are the professionals that do these inspections? We don't have staff that do it then? It would be contracted out, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's correct. So it would be contracted out. It could be a gas inspection. It could be, we might have to have a professional come in who specializes in a particular type of equipment, air handling equipment or that type of thing. So almost always it's going to be, in this case, bringing in professionals.
Okay. Thank you, Director Johnson. Ms. Klein.
So looking at the 5-year horizon, just looking forward at our large capital projects, we have the 2027 apparatus replacement, 2029 SCBA bottle life cycle replacement, and the 2030 apparatus replacement. And looking at our financials on the screen here in front of you, so we can see those large projects coming in this capital addition line, as well as our proposed CWF and GCF funding up in the revenue side. I can answer any questions on these line items.
So this is a very challenging budget for that area. Does the utilities section pay into this?
I believe that there is utility.
Okay.
Yeah, like
That's fine.
this is one of those services that isn't just the area, so it's a distinct boundary that we'd have to look
I see.
into.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
We do not see any questions, so we can move forward.
Okay. So going into the Chilliwack River Valley, so this is the fire service for Chilliwack River Valley. Key highlights of this plan is vehicle replacement, equipment replacements, and again, significant increases in maintenance and building costs, as well as building and equipment audits. So looking at the mandatory project list, again, we're happy to answer any questions. This includes funding sources as well as reasoning on why the project is mandatory. And the second side is their discretionary projects, all a low risk level, but happy to break any out for conversation.
Okay.
Okay. Looking again at our 5-year horizon, these are the projects, the capital projects that we're looking at. So community sign in 2026, apparatus and replacement, training props, architectural consultant, jaws of life, and looking at further building expansion costs. So as shown in the grant plan, again, this line is your transfer from CWF, as well as your capital additions down here.
Okay.
Okay, so moving into our Cultus Lake Fire Department. Oops. So the fire department is a service provided by the Cultus Lake Fire Department. Key highlight is a replacement requirement in 2030. So the budget is provided by Cultus Lake Park Board, and it is proposed based on the request of funding from the Park Board. We have 2 options presented in this budget, so looking for direction on these ones. We have included option 1 as part of the financial summary plan for taxation estimates. And this one includes CWF funding in 2030 to cover our cost of the apparatus. Looking at the option 2, this would be a tax-funded apparatus, so it's increasing taxes to put away surplus funds to fund it in the future.
Do you want that now?
Sure.
Oh, I would go with option 1, using community work funds.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
So as presented for sure. Okay. Moving into Hemlock. So this is a fire protection service for Hemlock Valley. Ongoing initiatives for this one is fire protection first responder service offered by the department, informal road rescue services, recruitment retention works, as well as asset management planning. So key highlights of the plan are, again, significant increases in maintenance and equipment, as well as building and equipment audits. The challenges for this service are limited membership. Members that are not primarily residing in Hemlock are attending to callouts. It's not currently recognized by fire underwriters. And with community growth, we may benefit from membership. On the screen is the mandatory project list. So again, happy to answer any questions on these individual projects. And discretionary, the professional inspections again. And looking forward in 2028, there's an initiative to replace the generator. Okay.
Director Wardenberg.
Yeah, a couple questions for the chair and staff. If somebody tell me how old is that engine up there? I think I asked this before or in one of the meetings. Do you know? If not, come back to me. I just want to defer this back to staff on I want to discuss some tax implications and other things to do with this fire department. Thank you.
I'll get that information for you shortly on the age of the engines. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Wardenberg. Ms. Klein.
Okay, going into Columbia Valley. So this is the fire protection for Columbia Valley. Ongoing initiatives include capital planning for future capital expenses, including fire truck and road rescue replacements. This service area provides first responder, road rescue, and fire protection. And key highlights of this plan, again, are the maintenance and equipment costs, as well as building and equipment audits and a remuneration update for officers. Risks and challenges. Again, the mandatory initiatives are essential for maintaining this level of service. There is gear storage and building maintenance issues, as well as a replacement for 2032, which is outside of this financial plan for equipment for SCBA. Looking at the mandatory list, we can answer any questions if you have any.
I do. So, sorry. No, thank you. I think the slide before was mandatory was this gear storage, but I'm not really seeing it anywhere. And I know we talked about that. I just wondering where it will show up.
So our plan for 2026 is to develop a plan and then come to you in 2026, discuss that plan, and then attribute those costs through our 2027 budget planning process. It was felt that there was much discussion yet to be had on how that would, how we would proceed on achieving that requirement. Therefore, it's not reflected.
Okay, and then would that be the same for saving for a future fire truck? I'm not, because I don't see that on the list either long term. I know we just got one. I just don't know if that's an ongoing, just always saving for a fire truck.
We are always saving for fire trucks. I can just jump to the this slide. So looking down at this bottom line item, the transfer to surplus savings, that would be building up for that future replacement. And so, like I said, the 2032 is when the SCBA is being replaced, which is outside. But by the end of 2030, this plan will get us to 685,000 in reserve and 300 in surplus.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Ms. Klein.
Sorry.
Oh, something else?
I had more questions about that one. Thank you. And so the fire chiefs conference. So it's my understanding that other chiefs do go to this conference. But again, I'm not seeing that that specific item is on other people's list. So how are they being paid for? Is that just come out of their regular budget? And they like I'm not really sure why that one is specific to mine.
It's specific to yours in 2026 because it's something new. Many other chiefs and other departments have already been going for many years. It's already part of the existing budget. Each department and each chief attends these conferences in different ways. Some of them choose to go to the entire conference and stay in a hotel. Some of them run out for the day and come back. There's a range of conference experiences.
One follow-up, Mr. Chair. So another question that came up last night because I attended the fire department AGM. And so if you can go to that one that shows the requisition, I guess. It's in the next one, maybe. Okay. So when that money is requisitioned, is some of the tax requisition, the member tax requisition, is some of it like does it go to the fire department? Go to the fire department and then some of it is taken back to pay for staff, like FERD staff. So yeah, the question kind of was, do they get this budget and then have to portion some of it back to pay for the FERD staff as part of overhead or something?
So the staff line item is built into that salaries, benefits, and operational support. So the tax requisition would cover the whole budget. So fire remuneration is included in that line item, as well as FERD staff. It's all included in this service area based on the allocation of service we provide.
Okay.
May I also add that the fire department is not like an independent society, so they don't receive any of these funds directly.
No.
No. It's all administered through the FERD.
Okay, I'll follow up with you. That makes sense. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Ms. Klein.
Okay, so this is the one that doesn't have any projects, and since Director Damel's not on the line, I'll skip over to our North Fraser budget.
So, excuse me, but so Laidlaw pays into Popcom.
Yes, so the service is provided by Popcom, and Laidlaw pays.
So how much are they contributing to the Popcom department?
Sure. So we tax for 68,000, and the operating expenses for the service are 55 in 2026. So that would go to the.
That's what goes directly to our.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so looking at our electoral area CF&G, which is North Fraser. This fire department is for 2 First Nations communities, a correctional facility, and north of the Fraser. So this service actually has the highest call volume of the AA fire services and includes road rescue, first responder, and fire protection. This 2026 financial plan highlights firefighter remuneration, apparatus replacements, again, the increases in maintenance and equipment costs, building equipment audits, as well as building upgrades to the halls and equipment upgrades. Budget risks in this for the service are the service levels are high. Growth in the area does have potential to increase the call volume more, and mandatory initiatives are essential for maintaining this level of service. As with the others, we have a mandatory proposed projects listing with funding source and reasoning, and we can answer any questions you have on these. Okay. And moving to the discretionary, all with a low risk level. Okay, and looking forward to the 5-year horizon. So we have, again, a list of, so there's 2026 plus all the way to 2030 projects in here. We have our 2030 apparatus replacement as well as 2026. The 2025 apparatus that is part of the CWF plan in the areas is not on this list because it's already been ordered. So this is funding that we'd be adding to the apparatus that has been ordered.
Director Warden.
Yeah, thank you. Questions. My concerns, and I look over last year's budget and then this year's budgets, and I'm concerned about my community works funds are all being dedicated towards fire equipment. I am an exception as far as area C and RG and F go, and as they have a surplus in community works funds, I do not. And the last budget, last year's, there was a, so basically what I'm seeing is that the transfer from community works funds for $1,070,000. Last year it was taken out of reserves. From what I seen, this year, because of the criteria, I would imagine, is now taken out of the community works funds, which affects my balance in my community works funds a lot. So I'm not sure how to approach that, but I would like that changed. I would like a change of about $300,000, about $100,000 from each area, coming out of reserves, like it was in last year's, and 100,000 going into community works funds. But that's just my thoughts on this. I'm not sure how do you want to proceed. If you want a meeting with the rest of the area directors or the comments right now, I'm not sure, but those are my comments and concerns over this budget.
For sure, I'm happy to discuss it now. I think I'm just looking for clarification on the the project for your CWF that you would not like to contribute for. For all of the fire trucks? Or,
no, I'd like to reduce the 1 year by $100,000.
Which year? The 2026? 2026. So instead of 250,000, 150,000?
That's
Okay.
right. Now I know you want to make it equal through all the different we're all paying for it, right? So and we're all equally paying for it. So I'm not sure if that can be arranged with the other directors. But at this point in time, those are my thoughts. That's what I would like to do.
So we will have to bring it back to make that change, but I'm happy to hear other thoughts for sure. For the CWF funding, how we've incorporated it has allowed us to decrease the amount of savings we put away each year. So we can look at that, but happy to hear other comments.
Director Davidson.
I'm certainly open to it. You know, if when Director Wardenberg is referring to spending from surplus instead, then that just raises questions about, okay, does that from surplus, not reserves? So does that have any sort of unexpected consequences of doing that? And the grand total of CWF funds, if $100,000 are returned back into placeholder status, for want of a better term, I'm sure we'll find a way to spend it in the next 5 years. But I'm open to it. I don't, you know, as long as it's not translating or doesn't need. Sorry, my only concern would be if this needs to translate into additional tax requisition to cover that. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I would say it does. So if we're using surplus or reserves now, that means we don't have enough to fund a future replacement. And so we've built this 5-year plan so that if we were taking this amount of money from CWF or GCF or whatever we're doing, then we've been able to reduce that tax to put away future savings. So it will impact taxation.
I guess the question is how much of a per home, like what's the swing on the mill rate for this service area if you pull the 300,000 out of CWF?
Yeah, so that's what we'd have to bring back in January for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you looking to reduce your CWF as well then?
Not specifically. I'm kind of thinking with all the variables that go into CWF and that 5-year timeline, you got to move it or lose it eventually. And the projects that I see right now are worthy. for CWF spending. You know, fire is expensive and everybody benefits. So yeah, it's a good candidate. I'm not sure what Director Wardenberg's specific circumstances are that he needs 100,000 back for some other purpose. I'm sure we'll touch base about it, but in principle, I support it.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also support having another look at this. As our previous discussions between the three of us, I think that we're pretty amicable in terms of sharing, reallocating grant funds, and the residents of Area G. Fire Hall is fully funding the fire hall. With as little tax requisition as possible, I think is a priority for us. And we also have some grant funds that need to be allocated. So, Director Wardenberg, we can definitely have that conversation. I would prefer to see the plan stay as it is, and we talk about how we can help the residents of Area C through unallocated grant funds.
Thank you, Director Castle. Director Wardenberg.
Yeah, no, thank you for the comments from the two directors. And I'm not against this staying the same if there's other allocations. I guess my biggest, I would like the extra funds because I would like to use them in the parks. And there's a couple of deficiencies there that I anticipated to be in those budgets this year, and they were not. And $100,000 basically covers that line item or the missing ones. So that's my rationale, but willing to discuss it totally with the other directors as we move forward.
Director Wardenberg, Director Castle.
Absolutely workable and a worthy cause for the residents of Area G to support in Area C.
Good, thank you. So, question: the firefighter remuneration, that's a $50,000 increase this year.
The proposed changes are around $50,000 estimated.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Ms. Klein.
Ms. Klein, may I interrupt if you're okay with me going back and answering a question that Director Wardenberg asked about the age of engines at Hemlock? I can answer that now if you'd like, if you're interested. So there was an engine, it's a 2006 engine, and we had planned for its replacement in 2031 after 25 years, but we are trying to push that. We have pushed that to 30 years. So that 2006 is planned to be replaced in 2036. And then there's another engine there that's fairly new. It's a 2020. Again, we had planned to replace that after 20 years in 2040, but we're also trying to push that to 30 years. We have to get permission from FUS to do this, but we're trying our best to distribute those funds over a long period of time, the savings required. But as you all know, the cost of fire trucks, whether new or used, is incredible.
Good, thank you. Ms. Barker, that's interesting. 30-year timeline. I seem to have run into 20-year, 25-year. I've never heard of 30-year.
Yeah, so FUS requires 20 to 25 years, depending on the size of the community and other factors. But we can try, and we always do try, to see if we can get a one-time extension to give us an additional years to save. Sometimes they will do that. Sometimes they may not. So we are always trying to stretch out that time as long as the engine itself is still in good condition. But we may or may not be successful. So we want to ensure that we are careful, that we make sure that we save enough money in case we aren't granted that extension to 30 years.
So there isn't a firm regulation on this. Each time a vehicle comes up for renewal, we have to go and get a discretionary decision.
So there is no regulation. It is just trying to meet the fire underwriter survey's requirements. So they are very particular on the age of engines. Doesn't matter how much mileage is actually put on these engines. Doesn't matter if these engines are, could last for 40 years. They don't care. It's very straight, black and white across in terms of their requirements.
Okay.
However, we can apply for an extension, which they might entertain. And that can be based on numerous factors of the hull, the age of your other engine, your members, the general functioning of your department. If they think that your department's going to be successful in that extra 5 years and getting those funds, they might just turn it down because they have the ability to do that because they're not a regulatory body.
But it's FUS that makes the ultimate decision.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Kinno, or Ms. Klein.
Okay, I'm just going to jump over to our Yarrow and Ryder Lake. So this is a service area provided by the City of Chilliwack Fire Department, much like the Cultus Lake Park Board. The proposed budget is essential for maintaining the service. And so the highlight of this one is really that the operational increases from Chilliwack resulted in a deficit in 2025. So it has to be taxed in 2026. And as you can see over on the far right, because there's no surplus, we've had to record a deficit in 2026 to tax for that increase. Moving forward, we've bumped up our transfer to savings to be $700 a year. And our final fire budget today is POPCOM. So this service is for POPCOM, Laidlaw, and 3 First Nations communities. So the key highlights for this plan are, again, the increases to maintenance and equipment, building and equipment audits. This one has a building addition as well as apparatus and equipment replacement. Again, this fire department has a high call volume, provides first responder, road rescue, and fire protection. The risks and challenges are the mandatory initiatives are essential for maintaining this level of service. So I just added a slide here this year for the project funding for the expansion of the hall. So a note that the timing is based on the Ministry of Transportation approval of the lot, and the project is partially funded in this financial plan. So we provided a breakdown of the project funding, including proposed CWF and GCF funding. So just to provide some clarity on that GCF fund, if we don't spend the money, it gains interest every year. And so there's $31,000 of interest added for GCF. We've proposed that it be added to this project. And Community Works additional funds have been proposed for $271,000 as well. Can answer any questions on this project.
That's fine, thank you.
Looking at the mandatory project list, again, funding and reasoning included. Discretionary includes those professional inspections as well as helmets. And looking at the 5-year financial plan includes that expansion as well as replacements. And moving forward to the financials, you can see that we've included that CWF and GCF. Part of this was budgeted for 2025. And so anything that was not spent in 2025 will be brought forward in a carry forward bylaw in the spring. Okay. So that brings us to the end of the fire protection service. And we have a motion on the screen in front of you.
Okay.
And for some clarity for the committee, so what we heard as staff was that there were 2 budgets from this list of protective services, budget 214 and budget 217, to refer back to staff for further analysis, and it would come back in January.
Okay.
Yes, and Lauren will just bring that on the screen for us.
So did I understand that you were looking for a motion at this time?
That's right. Lauren will just put it up on the screen for you.
I'll move it, Bill.
right, Director McAhonik.
Are we gonna exclude area B until Director Adamo's back as well?
It would not be our intention to exclude Area B. If Director Adamo came back to the meeting and wished to reconsider this motion, we could then do so at that time.
Thank you.
So the listing on the screen has removed those two budgets for being referred back to staff.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion as evidenced by the slide.
Correct.
Okay, move Davidson. Director Davidson, second Director McAhonik. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Okay, and then the second motion, Chair Dickey.
Okay, and that would need a mover.
So moved.
Move Director Castle, second Director Davidson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
So it would be my recommendation we're at 12:06 that we recess the meeting and take a lunch break of 30 minutes and give everyone a chance to have a lunch, and then we would reconvene just shortly after 12:30.
Good, thank you.
Okay, we're recessed. So Chair Dickey, staff's recommendation is, now that we've reconvened the open meeting, that we circle back to the general government services and revisit by budget 130, which is Area B economic development. And we'll just turn things back over to our Deputy CFO, Beth Klein.
Okay, so coming back into our general government section, we just left off one budget, looking at our Area B economic development. So the purpose of this service is to fund economic developments for the benefit of Electoral Area B residents. Initiatives are that funds have been issued in the past as grants, and we are continuing to build up our surplus. So this was a bylaw adopted in 2019, and on the screen are activities that have been funded since. So on the screen in front of you is our first option. This option is reflected in the estimated tax impacts at the back of the slide deck. The reason for this option is every year we have been budgeting for $50,000 of consulting work and taxing for that service, and of course building up surplus, as we are, as I've showed in the previous slide, have not been providing those grants back into the community. So we have proposed to reduce the taxation and start building up a plan on using those funds in this option. The second option is to follow last year's plan and reduce taxation or reduce the consulting cost every year, but keep taxation up. So looking for direction on if you are comfortable with as presented for option one, or if you'd like to look at option two.
Director Adamo.
Yeah, thanks. I'm good to stay the course on this one because I have some pretty significant plans for 2026. So let's stay that course right now.
So option two?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so we're just going to make a change to this resolution for that 130 budget. And then Lauren will bring them up on the screen. Okay, so we have for 102 and 105 to move forward as presented.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second that.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, Contrary, motion carries. We have
And then motion two. Yep.
Moved. For a mover? Move Director Makahonic, second Director Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Okay, so getting back into our protective services, these are the remaining protective service budgets. And so we will be looking at 205 emergency management and bylaw enforcement today, but can go into any of the flood control or animal control if requested. So starting with our emergency management budget. The service area purpose for this budget is to manage and maintain emergency management operations, the program, policy, and service. So there's a list of core services on the right on your screen: emergency planning, neighborhood preparedness, operational and EOC readiness, training and exercises, evacuee service, fire smart, public alerting, maintaining savings for unrecoverable emergency costs. This financial plan highlights the new act that is still being understood with regulations further delayed. And just a note on requirements that are still unfolding for engagement with Indigenous governing bodies, business continuity, risk assessments and management, and inclusion of animals and intersectional disadvantaged in emergency management. Risks and challenges of the budget, changing environment and increase in hazard complexities, the EMCR policy and guidance, change frequency and unknowns. So Emergency and Disaster Management Act and forthcoming regulation. Other considerations is the vast land base and high expectation on finite response resource, as well as overlapping jurisdictional complexities and unplanned emergency activations. The reason we are looking at this budget today is for these discretionary projects. So they are the Household Preparedness Guide and Evacuation Route Guide, with a note that the Evacuation Route Guide would be grant funded, and the risk level is on the screen there in front of you. We can answer any questions on these if you have any.
Questions? Director Davidson.
Just on the preparedness guide, it says including printing costs. And anytime I'm not sure how much of that line item is the actual printing cost and these days of digital delivery. I'm wondering as to the necessity of having these things in, put it this way, of the FERD taking on the burden of printing as opposed to digital distribution and people can print it off if they see fit.
Through the chair to Director Davidson. Thank you. I'd highlight that we haven't fully costed a project on this because this is not yet an approved budget. We do have old service areas that have been lingering since the creation of the 205 that need to be funded and or need to be used and can only be used for specific purposes. All of our material in emergency management right now is digital, and the uptake of it is very low. By and large, our community members are not gaining the materials that they need, and the intention is to help us take the essential outreach to community and community members by putting something in print in their households and communities that they can access and that can go with them in their car or a go bag and that they have when an emergency arises. So we would look at proper costing once we know that this budget is approved and that we can pull it from the old service areas, and then we would stick within that budgetary range for the development and the printing.
Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on that as well, follow up on printing. I have an Area H evacuation guide that I send out every year. specifically to email addresses. And people ask me questions that are in there on page 1. And so they're too long. Like, and that's what they are telling me is anybody that talks to me about these, they're kind of happy that they exist, but they really aren't reading them. I don't imagine they would read one if it got mailed to their house or, but they might if it was a 1-page because really they want to know, they have to be able to live with the unknown. In my case, it's like, where do I go if there's an evacuation? And I have to reply, I don't know. You're going to turn left or right, really. Like that's the options when you come to the main road, and hopefully there'll be some communication around that. So for me, some of these guides, I understand sort of the rationale behind them. They exist. They're online. You can get them everywhere. I send out links all the time, and so I just would caution, I guess, about expensive printing costs.
Okay. Director Adamo.
Thanks very much. Just 2 quick things. So you print the guide, you take care of that. I don't see any mail out budgeting. Is that an issue? Or is that built into another plan? And with respect to the Sunshine Valley, are you getting cooperation from the developer with respect to this, or are you working strictly with the new fire chief? And when could that be expected? Because our evacuation plan would be pretty significant considering all the other areas of Area B. That would be the single largest evacuation.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Adamo, those are very particularly nuanced questions. I might highlight that the Hemlock Evacuation Guide is now publicly available online, but communications hasn't yet launched its communication strategy in relation to that project. So we're still working on rolling that one out. This particular project for the Household Preparedness Guide is not an evacuation guide. It's a refresh on our 2018 Preparedness Guide. That guide is 100 pages, has many pages that are duplicated content, doesn't include fire smart information, and is aligned with outdated legislation. And it's essential for us to replace that as part of our statutory obligations. And so we're looking to bring that one forward for that purpose as part of drawing down those old service area budgets because they really align with one another. The evacuation route guide for Sunshine Valley must follow the requirements for all evacuation route guides. Those requirements are set by the province of BC, and they are very prescriptive in the way that we must deliver the project. So that's why they have so many pages and so much information. If we want to tap into the funding from the province, we have to follow the guidelines associated with that funding. As far as creating the public attention for the current Hemlock Guide, that will come with a communication strategy. I hope that answers that.
Thank you, Director Adamo. Moving forward.
Okay, so looking forward at the 5-year horizon, so you can see those 2 proposed guides, EDMA implementation, EMCR finance guide and policy updates for spring 2026, EDMA regulation delayed to 2027, and the Fire Smart program. So looking at the financials for 2027, there was a comment on the increase to requisition. And so the Fire Smart program funds a position for the Fire Smart coordinator. And so we only have to 2026 confirmed. We don't know about 2027 at this point. So because that grant isn't approved on our side for 2027, we've included the position within the tax requisition line. If that grant comes in for 2027, then that requisition would then drop for next year's financial plan.
Okay, thank you. And the on the expense side, the salary benefits overhead going from 422 to 544.
Yeah, so that one includes salary benefits and overhead. And I believe that there is some summer students for the grant funding portion in there as well. Let's confirm. Yeah, so the part of the Fire Smart program includes some summer students, and that's what you see in that 2026 line. And then regular increases for salaries, benefits.
So the 120,000 would mostly be the summer students and then also the increases to salaries.
Summer students are $30,000 and the rest is regular salaries, benefits, and overhead.
Okay. Director Dixon.
Thank you. Okay, so I brought this up earlier. So earlier on that slide before, you had an annual cost of $96,000 for proposed guides. What are those evacuation guides? Are those the guides that we talked about earlier, where it was $56,000? Like, so
Yeah, so the 96,000 refers to these two projects grouped together. So portion is savings, portion is grant.
Okay. And both of those are mandatory?
These ones are discretionary projects, listed as discretionary projects.
Okay, so but we can't get a grant for the household preparedness guides? Okay. So discretionary means we don't actually have to do it, correct?
It comes with a risk level. So the household preparedness guide is a low level risk to not proceed, and a medium for the evacuation route guide.
Okay, and so would that be an actual savings if that was not in the budget? Like, to me, it looks like it would be.
No, if I may, what it will result in by not doing this project is that we will continue to have to carry old service area budgets that we can't use for other purposes in future budget years, looking for creative ways to draw them down based on how they were collected. So this will sit in appropriated surplus and continue to be on the docket every year for contemplation, year after year after year.
Thank you, Director Dixon. Director Davidson.
Right. So apologies if this has already been covered, but I'm looking at that Fire Smart program annual cost up to 600K. If this was already covered, I missed it. I'm trying to understand, we went from one grant funded position to a partially grant funded position to presumably ultimately a non-grant funded position on the Fire Smart side. And that we somehow got to up to 600K per year for Fire Smart. I'm trying to get my head around that one.
I'm happy to speak to that. Thank you. The Fire Smart program allows us two different ways to apply, and this is our second year of applying for the maximum allowable based on our electoral areas and our risk levels. So we're allowed to submit an initial application that covers up to $600,000 of Fire Smart operations, which includes Fire Smart related staffing. We are not sponsoring the Fire Smart coordinator role with taxation. It is 100% grant funded. However, you can see that we've put the salary or is funded by the grant in this current year of the 5-year plan, because we don't know by and large if the province is going to make that grant available year after year. We do have to maintain the responsibility of paying for that staff member, because the board gave us direction to make that a permanent role. So we're not taxing for the role, but we've reflected in the 4 additional years of the plan that if we didn't get that funding, that's what the budget would be. And with the funding in hand, we can then offset that every year going forward. So with the maximum $600,000, that covers the staff member in our emergency management department, and it's also covering summer students that are actually working towards utilities engineering Fire Smart risk reduction.
So without the Fire Smart grant, do the summer students basically come not there, or are they grant contingent?
Without the grant, the 2 particular students working in the engineering and utilities department wouldn't have a budget to sustain their role.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Davidson, Director Dixon.
Just confirm, but Fire Smart is optional. Great. So if we did not get grant funding, I guess like for next year, we would have the option of coming back and saying, we just can't manage this anymore, kind of deal. Like, maybe nicer than that, but that message.
I believe what you're asking is related more to the maintaining a role, and I think that would be a matter for closed chambers. But if we didn't have the grant funding for FireSmart, we absolutely would have to come back to the board to make some determinations about how to proceed.
So once again, FireSmart is 100% grant funded at this time. Okay, thank you.
100% grant funded.
Chair Dickey, I did note that Director Castle had his hand raised. I'm not sure if it's still raised or not.
I don't think we can see. There he is. Director Castle, for some reason you weren't on the screen, so.
All good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If we can take a look at the budget slide for this 205. I tend to jump towards member tax requisition line on these things because that's really what impacts taxation for our residents. And if I'm reading it right, the difference between 2025 and 2026 represents a $19,000 increase in tax requisition. Am I reading that right?
Correct, if I do quick math.
Yep. So as noted in the preamble, you know, a $19,000 increase in an EA wide budget does not result in you know, it's a few dollars. And then any of the other increases, 26 to 27, those are kind of assuming that we don't get a grant. And then we have the opportunity to revisit our spending at that time. So I think I'm very comfortable. There's a lot of big numbers in the slides leading up to this that can be, you know, unsettling. But for me, a $19,000 increase year over year for tax requisition for emergency management is you know, not a big deal and very justified. So I definitely would support this.
Good. Thank you, Director Castle. I do not see any further discussion, Ms. Klein.
Okay, so the next budget that we'll go through is the bylaw enforcement budget. So this service area is, the purpose is for investigating, process, and resolve contraventions to the FERD bylaw. So ongoing initiatives are the bylaw compliance and enforcement policy. Key highlights of the plan are an increase in legal and operational costs, as well as we have removed the soil deposit from this budget, and it has moved over to the commercial gravel, and I'm not sure the new name for it, but 604 budget. We'll talk about that in future slides. So challenges and risks the bylaw enforcement is highly dependent on tax revenues. Proposed projects for this budget is the CRV noise bylaw enforcement policy. This will be done by staff. I can answer any questions on that.
It appears there are none.
Okay.
Sorry.
And look,
Yeah. Director Davis.
Just backing up, I guess, to the previous slide, one before this, ongoing initiatives. If I recall, I think the staff work plan had this completing this year. I'm wondering, I guess that's not happening.
Through the chair to Director Davidson. That was initially slated to be completed at the end of this year. It's been pushed back, and I'm looking for completion probably around March. I'm reviewing all the previous consultation that was done over the past several years to bring this policy forward. But yes, target date is March, and then early in the new year, we plan on having a workshop to review and bring forth a bunch of discussion and questions to the board or to the area directors seeking direction in what we want this policy to look like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Davidson. I don't see any further discussion.
Okay, and just ending on the financial slide. So the tax requisition is going down due to the movement of the soil deposit going into the 604 budget.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the end of this section, unless there's others that the committee would like to go through. So as a reminder, these are the budgets that are in this section.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Davidson.
I'm just curious, like, are we covering the commercial gravel tax requisition today?
Yes, it'll be in a couple of sections from now.
Okay, thank
you.
Okay, we can move forward.
Looking for this resolution to be okay.
So moved.
Move Director Castle, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Next, going into the transportation services. So in this section, we have transit, whistle cessation, street lighting. And so we will be looking at the two budgets at the top, but can certainly go through any of the others if the committee wishes. Looking at transit. So for the EA budgets, we have two transit service areas. 303 and 304. So the purpose of these ones is the cultus seasonal and paratransit handy dart services provided by the City of Chilliwack. And the FERD is invoiced by the City of Chilliwack at the end of the year based on net cost per service hour. So combined risks and challenges for both of these service areas are increased fuel and operating cost, new transit facility in Chilliwack coming online, transit collective agreement that expires in 2026, and cost of service expansion and loss of COVID recovery subsidy. Looking at the paratransit budget 303. So this service is shared between Area E and H, providing handy dart service. Key highlights of the plan are surplus savings are used to soften the tax decrease over the 5-year plan, as well as increased operating costs and expansion. Budget risks and challenges include the expansion and increased use of service, as well as just looking at the currently it's based 160 service hours, and now 250 service hours are being used. So looking at the 5-year financial plan, that City of Chilliwack bill would be this line item here, the consulting contract services, and of course the requisition increase year over year. Okay, and our next service is the cultus seasonal. So this is the transit service for Cultus Lake community during the summer months from July 1st to Labor Day. Again, this plan is using surplus savings to soften taxation. In this plan, there's a completion of a service review led by BC Transit and a review letter of agreement with Chilliwack. Budget risks and challenges for Chilliwack service expansion and transit garage costs, as well as the end of the COVID recovery subsidy, which has increased costs, still in a catch-up phase, and BC Transit, a review of the service may lead to service charges delayed. So looking at the financials again, this consulting contract line is that operating cost. Okay, if there are no questions, yeah, okay.
Director Dixon.
Thank you. And so I think I ask this question every year now for 10 years or so. Part of the review, and I guess it hasn't happened. The question is, who's using the service up to Cultus Lake? Like, is it intended to bring the people of Chilliwack up to Area H? or is it intended to be bringing Area H back into Chilliwack? And so, I sometimes the bus has a lot of people coming up and the same people going back. And so so that's sort of where I understand the theory behind this. What I'm not aware of is Area H, if Area H residents are actually using it to come into town, or if it really is just people from Chilliwack wanting to come up to the lake for the day and take transit, which is great, and then head back home. And so those are questions that I'm hoping at some point the review will be able to answer.
Okay.
So do we. We hope that we're also looking forward to that review. Allison, if you're familiar with Allison, she's pushing hard and has for years to get that review. And we feel that her determination hopefully is successful this year. Would you say that, David?
Thank you. Yes, through the chair to Director Dixon. She's got confidence this will be the year this work is done. So you won't have to ask this question again.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Ms. Klein.
Okay. And unless we would like to go through the street lighting or the animal control, we can jump over to the resolution.
Okay, do we have a mover? Move Director Dixon, second Director Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
Okay, moving into our environmental health services. So there is technically 4 that we're going to go through, starting with our Popcom drainage. So this service is for the storm sewer operation and maintenance in Popcom. Key highlights of this plan is this is intended to be the first year of the amalgamated drainage service area. So that's the 3 drainage, West Popcom, East Popcom, and Popcom drainage service connection. Ongoing initiatives for this budget or service area for the annual catch basin cleanouts, and additional operation and maintenance savings requirements with each new subdivision infrastructure taken on. Risks and challenges of this budget. So looking at the preliminary asset management work, the estimated replacement value of almost $8 million and suggested annual contribution of just under 115,000 per year to savings for replacement. This plan achieves 25% of the suggested annual savings target. As much of the storm sewer infrastructure has an 80-year life expectancy, significant changes to savings have been postponed until an asset management plan is in place for the service area. Under this plan, 25% of recommended savings due to the nature of the storm sewer and life cycle extended, postponed until that management plan is in place. So looking at the amalgamation of the 3 services into this service area, just some points on the reasoning. So simplified administration, giving greater financial flexibility and a uniform cost recovery. On the 5-year horizon in 2026, we have a replacement of infiltration galleries that are end of life, costing $75,000. So looking at this service area, now that we are budgeting for the 3 services to be amalgamated into this tax requisition. And so in the financial summary, because we don't have existing assessment for all 3 areas, because we haven't taxed for one of the service areas, we aren't able to provide those estimates, but hoping to do so once the bylaw is passed. Okay. Okay, going into our garbage for Area B. So this service is for the operations of the Sunshine Valley Transfer Station and Area B curbside program. Key highlights of the plan are a new semi-automated curbside collection program starting in 2026, And along with that, we're eliminating the quarterly utility billing. Ongoing initiatives are transfer station site operations by the contractor, curbside collection, disposal of garbage, recycling, organics, and yard waste. Budget risks and challenges for this service. The service has significant savings, and over the past several years, these funds have been drawn down to minimize taxation. The transfer has been eliminated for the 2026 plan. BC assessment has historically lagged in capturing new development in Sunshine Valley in the tax roll, so that is a challenge, although there's work being done on that. Other considerations for the service is the new semi-automated curbside collection program starts in 2026. So that program provision includes the provision of standardized carts for the curbside customers, a collection schedule amended to weekly organics collection and biweekly garbage and recycling collection, and a $75,000 reduction in program costs per year compared to 2025. So historically, the service was funded through a combination of taxation through utility billing, $125 per year, and then a billing to First Nations. And the utility bills will be eliminated in 2026, and the service will be funded by taxation. So although it looks like a large increase for 2026, you can see that we've now eliminated that quarterly billing here, and it's now moved into taxation. Okay, and moving into our Boston Bar North Bend garbage. So this one is considered an asset at risk due to low savings. Operation of the Shomox landfill. The highlights of the plan is that it uses contractor values from previous year's plan. So the first, as well as the first of 5 phases of progressive closure of the landfill, which is scheduled for 2028. Budget risks and challenges. So the DOCP, which was updated in 2023, has a wide variation in the remaining life of landfill. So it was estimated between 16 and 38 years. There is a legal obligation to put aside funds for the closure of the landfill. The amount required annually is using the closure cost of numbers of year of life remaining of $50,000 in 2026. This slide is the first of our asset at risk slide to look at. So the intention of this slide is to provide some values on why something is an asset at risk. So what we've done here is we have provided what it would cost if there is a large scale failure and there is no savings to fund it, or not enough savings to fund it, what that means to the taxpayer. And so right now we're estimating with our current financial plan, the average residential taxation would be $443. If you were to have a large scale failure, it could jump to $2,300, or we'd have to take out emergency debt, which would be $500. All estimated, of course, based on the information we have right now.
And what form would a large scale failure of a landfill take?
Yeah, so this one is considering closure of the landfill, if we had to close the landfill.
And there was a previous slide that it could continue on. Was it 38 years or?
The 2023 closure plan was between 16 and 38 years.
Yeah. So why would we have to close it immediately?
That would be something like the Ministry of Environment revokes our operational certificate. It would essentially come from some sort of ministerial order.
Is that something that's not uncommon, or?
It would be unusual, certainly, but the point of the slide was to illustrate like a worst case scenario of what could happen. We don't think it's particularly likely.
Okay, good. Thank you. Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just going back to the planned survey for 2026. So once you get the determination from that, will actually give us a better idea of the remaining life. I'm hoping that it improves.
Yeah, that's correct. And just for a reminder, that 16 to 38 years that the DOCP forecasted in 2023, it was 16 years remaining based on the current rate of airspace consumption leading up to that survey in 2023. 38 years is what our consultants would have expected based on more standard landfill operations. So we're hoping that the work that staff in the landfill society have done there in recent years will get us closer to that 38-year number.
Thank you, Director Johnson. Ms. Klein.
Okay, and just to look at the 5-year horizon, the phase 1 of the progressive closure is 2027, 2028. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump over. So I'm just going to touch on our other asset at risk or budget at risk is this drainage, the East Popham drainage. And so we've left this in here because the bylaw has yet to be adopted to merge the 3 services. And so just wanted to highlight that this was an asset at risk. If we were to merge services, that this asset at risk would then be removed from the list.
Okay.
Okay, and I will jump to the resolution unless there's others that anyone would like to go through.
Director Dixon.
Yeah. I just have a question before we go to resolution. I don't mind, and it's about the 421. So there's large sediment costs for Frost Creek, and I know they've just done a clean out, or they seemed large to me. And part of it is because of hauling. So is there work being done, like sort of finding a this is sort of sounds like the soil bylaw, doesn't it? What happens with the hauling? Like, how do you determine where to take it? Is it, I could just have some understanding of that.
Certainly, through the chair to Director Dixon, when planning these creek cleanout projects, we try and work with local landowners and any sort of local contacts that we have to identify disposal sites. Certainly, we don't make any money off of the sale of gravel. This is just a disposal, kind of in kind, and decisions are usually made based on availability of site and what the shortest hauling distance is. So yeah, this is something that we just work with the local community to identify sites.
Director Dixon. Ms. Klein.
Okay, jumping back to that resolution.
Oh, once again, Director Adamo, excuse me.
Thanks. That's fine. Just a quick question, because these are large ticket items with respect to what you're doing with all of that. Is there no provincial involvement anywhere along the way, or grant opportunities that would come up on a regular basis? I mean, we're talking about dikes and things like that, and I look at Abbotsford and Chilliwack, who are always seeking provincial and even federal funding to some degree. Do we not qualify for that in any of those categories?
Through the chair to Director Adamo, yeah, certainly we do apply, or we do qualify for those types of opportunities. The challenge is they're mainly capital in nature. These are more operational expenses, and those grants typically don't cover operations.
Okay, that seems to be addressed. So we need a motion. Move Director Johnson, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Okay, moving into our environmental development. So we will be talking about both the planning and the commercial gravel operations. Starting with our planning budget. So this provides property development and planning services to the electoral areas. Key highlights of this plan are the use of surplus to soften tax requisition in all of the 5 budget years, as well as decrease in operational cost allowances. Ongoing initiatives include continued emphasis on customer service day-to-day work, development applications, and ongoing projects, as well as routine updates to bylaw and processes. So the risks and challenges of this budget are the major complex applications require extensive staff resources. Economic conditions may result in lower application revenues and delay cost recovery goals, as well as the use of surplus to soften tax requisitions. If that requisite or the surplus runs out, we will need to increase tax in the future years. Other considerations are that the projects are funded by surplus and grants, and there's a potential for a major Crown land application to disrupt work plan and budget. The discretionary project on this service area are routine updates to bylaws and processes. And looking at the 5-year horizon, we have the Area E EOCP update and the Area B OCP update. And looking at the 5-year plan, again, that surplus and reserve balance you can see over here. We are using it slowly declining throughout the 5 years, but it is covering the operational costs.
Excuse me, I have a note here. Why is there a decrease in the operational costs allowance? Where I'm trying to figure out where I see that, but where do I? That is in my notes, but I don't see it on this chart.
Through the chair. So the decrease in operating expenses is that bottom line item there. And really what that represents is a reduction in expenditures related to staff training, legal support, membership fees, and those kinds of things that are typically lumped in under operating expenses. So those are what we would consider our discretionary expenditures under the budget. They do represent, however, a very small part of the overall budget, but they have been reduced in an effort to retain the tax requisition at a lower rate.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Ms. Klein.
Okay, moving into the commercial gravel operations. So the purpose of this service area is for commercial gravel operations and soil deposit regulation. Key highlights of the plan are the soil deposit regulation was added to the service area for 2026, which came with a new tax fund for that soil deposit. Ongoing initiatives are permitting compliance fees, noise and dust baseline monitoring, and Stave Lake Quarry groundwater monitoring. Budget risks and challenges. Our fee revenues vary with market demand for aggregates and economy. This budget is dependent on the adoption of the soil deposit regulation. Other considerations are the challenging work, so the noise and dust expectations and limited authority, and there's no precedent for soil deposit fee revenue. Looking at the discretionary projects, so we have the aggregate supply and demand study for 2026, 170,000, and the bylaw review and update. Can answer any questions on those.
So this is always this service generates enough funding that it doesn't cost our constituents anything. So
yes, these 2 projects are funded by those fees.
Yeah, Director Davidson.
So as I read this, member tax requisition has historically been 0, but in 2026 there will be a member tax requisition. And at a high level, I'm understanding that to be basically, it looks like you're moving half an FTE out of bylaw to soil deposit, to basically cover those costs. Makes perfect sense. But I'm trying to understand, like, holistically, you know, the surplus through to 2025 on a bylaw that's been running for 10 years. We're 1.7 million, so we're averaging 170K per year in accumulated surplus. At a high level, without getting into the details, that strikes me as enough to cover half an FTE. So I'm just, I know there's the assessment that needs to be done, but that's a one-time thing, at least for the foreseeable future. So I'm trying to get a handle as to why, even with all these things in place, even with beginning to do member tax requisitions in 2026, the surplus is still ticking down for the next 5 years when it's been ticking up steadily since the inception of this bylaw.
Through the chair to Director Davidson. We have identified a number of projects in the 2026 year which are funded by the surplus. Otherwise, when the soil deposit bylaw was considered by the board, it was understood that a portion of the new position to supplement the compliance and enforcement of that bylaw would be funded through tax requisition. And so that's what's being demonstrated here.
Yeah, I guess I'm just at a loss as to, it looks like for the 5-year plan, when you've got surplus, even with the tax requisition, still continuing to drop year after year after year. I mean, are we talking about a full-time position funded by this service area? Is that what I'm looking at?
Through the chair. The tax requisition is intended to support 50% of the full-time position. The remaining 50% is funded by the surplus, or rather by annual fees.
So I'm still struggling to understand when we've got an average accumulated surplus of 170K per year up until the end of this year, that with the tax requisition, that surplus is still draining down. What it seems like there's a fundamental operational change, because if your tax requisition is allowing for that half FTE, I'm struggling to understand what else is going on.
Through the chair to Director Davidson, there are a number of expenses that are being funded through the surplus. So predominantly the projects that are identified for 2026, which are fairly significant. We do have increases in legal support over the first couple years of this financial plan as we establish the soil deposit bylaw. And so some of those expenses are being covered by the surplus. And then in addition to that, we do have other positions within the service that are funded by fees as well.
So when I look at it, I see like the 5-year horizon, the projects that are listed. We've got 46, call it 46K, and then half an FTE tax requisition for 41. So I'm at 87. But again, the annual surplus has been 170K on average. So I'm still like about 90K. Not really sure where that's going, and even with that, the surplus is still shrinking. So I feel like I'm looking at incomplete information here, and I'm struggling with this one. Anyway, thank you.
Excuse me. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but one of the dynamics may be that we have a large surplus that's accumulated in the 604, and that's money that we've collected from aggregate operations. It's annual volume-based fees from gravel operators, and that's been accumulating for some time because we haven't been doing the kinds of projects like the supply and demand work, and that's because of other demands and staff resources. So that's the reason for the big surplus. We now the soil deposit bylaw service comes in and it's amalgamated with the commercial gravel operation service under a single service establishment bylaw, and we're advised that we have some flexibility in how that money is expended, but we're cautious about using this surplus that we collected from gravel operators to fund the regulation of soil deposit. And the idea, I think, is that there's an unfairness there if we've collected fees from gravel operators and we're using that to cover the cost of regulating a different sector of the economy. So while we're advised that there's some flexibility because it's ultimately one service area, we're not relying entirely on savings that are there because gravel operators paid those fees to pay for the soil deposit costs. And the tax rec you see on the top line there starts at 41,000. That's a little low in the first year because we anticipate bringing on that position at the end of April. That gives us time to get ministerial approval of the bylaw, and then it comes back to the board for reconsideration. And if the board adopts the bylaw, we'll proceed with the hiring. But we have some savings in year one because we would only be hiring in April. You also see costs through 2027, 2028, and so on. For example, like legal costs associated with soil deposit. It's not just a half of a bylaw enforcement officer that you see that generates the costs you see covered by member tax requisition. So as I said, I'm not entirely certain I'm following the question, but I hope that those comments are helpful.
Okay, thanks. It just, on the legal side, it looks like there's 2,000 for 2025, nothing for subsequent years. So I'm inferring the legal expenses must be under consultants or something like that.
Yes, that's correct. It's under the consultant contract.
Okay, thank you.
Just comment that, excuse me, go ahead, Director Dixon. I think that's good advice that Mr. Downleys is giving us, trying to keep some separation between the commercial gravel fees and the costs associated with soil deposit. And that was, as I remember, the province directed us to be aware that the gravel fees were to go for gravel regulation. So trying to predict what royalties might come our way or fees might come our way through the soil deposit, I'm guessing that's a very difficult thing to determine at this point. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For me, I'll admit it, I would very much like to use as much of that surplus as possible because it's looks high to me. But on the 5-year horizon one, where you've got bylaw review for 25.5 and the dust and noise monitoring for 20,000, that's the total cost. How do we pay for that? Is like the first one says staffing resources, but is that part of the tax requisition? Is it covered by the surplus? Is it just part of what the staff normally do?
Through the chair to Director Dixon, those project costs are intended to be funded through the existing surplus. So they are there to support the commercial gravel operations side of the service area, and they'll be funded through the surplus.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a motion before us. Is there a mover?
So moved.
Move Director Castle from Japan. Director Davidson seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Okay, moving into our recreation and culture section. So today we will be talking about the Elmer Carlson Pool, as well as the community parks and the heritage conservation, which has an option for consideration. Happy to go through any others if needed. Okay, starting with the Elmer Carlson Pool. So this service area is to provide outdoor pool for Boston Bar and North Bend residents. For this service, the highlights of the plan are to develop local lifeguards and swimming instructors, as well as asset planning for life cycle replacement. Ongoing initiatives include swimming lessons, local school partnership, and fun days. Looking at the service area risks and challenges, to maintain consistent contributions to asset replacement savings, ensuring long-term facility sustainability, as well as balancing savings with budget constraints and priorities. Other considerations are efforts to address and mitigate staffing shortages, and ensuring uninterrupted operations and project progress. Looking at the mandatory projects for this service area, we have one for 2030, which is the exterior door replacement, picnic tables and desk chairs, which would come from savings. And looking forward at the 5-year horizon, so we have replacements for each year, and we are happy to talk about if there's any questions.
Here's there are none.
Okay. And moving,
Director Johnson.
Sorry. Just a question about this past repair of the roof at the pool. And I think we budgeted around 80,000 for that repair, but it came in under by almost half, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So the cost of that was less than anticipated, although within that cost, we were not able to include the solar heating, replacement of the water heating, which is on top of the roof as well. And so that cost is included in 2026.
Okay, so that's yet to be done.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving forward.
okay, so the financials for the Elmore Carlson pool. Moving forward into the Area D community parks. So this service is for the operations and maintenance of 4 community parks, community trail, as well as street trees, sidewalks, trail connections, and 2 bus shelters. So the key highlights of this specific plan are operations for a new 5-acre community park and trail connection. Ongoing initiatives include asset management planning and planning for future community parks and trails and initiatives. Budget risks and challenges, rising costs of labor and supplies, savings contributions being assessed. Saving contributions are being assessed to meet future asset replacement. There's an increased demand for services, and this service is dependent on the BC Hydro grant. Other considerations, the climate change impacts to street trees. Looking at the proposed projects, there is a portion of a vehicle to support staffing requirements of a new park. This would be funded by surplus and is a high risk as we are unable to provide the service without this being added. Looking at the 5-year horizon, there is replacements, and we're happy to talk about any if there are questions.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
And again, the financials for this service area. And just to point out that BC Hydro grant is separate on that line item there. Okay, moving into the heritage conservation. So this service is between area A and B, and there are 2 options on this one. So this service is to promote the heritage conservation efforts within area A and B. A highlight of this plan is the Station House project is a grant flow through in this service area. There is an optional scenario to keep tax levels consistent with prior years. Just to look at the Station House funding as a reminder, this service area has a contingency fund, backs up funding for both area A and B as there was a decision made in 2020. The project is expected to start construction in 2026, and after that construction, the Boston Bar and North Bend Enhancement Society will enter into an operating agreement. So that project is on the 5-year horizon and is grant funded. I can take a question if.
Director Johnson.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
If I'm correct, I think the delay or what we're waiting for now to get this project off the ground is still the permit from BC Hydro. Is that correct? Thank you.
Yes, through the chair to Director Johnson, that is still the remaining item where we're working through how do we get the power to the building itself.
Director Adamo.
Thanks very much. Through the chair to staff. What is Area B's contribution to that? I couldn't remember offhand. Was it $25,000 a year, or was it just the one-time only backstop that we did?
The backstop is, it's around 80,000, an old estimate probably needs to be updated, but it's coming from surplus. So just looking at 2025 requisition split, Area B contributed 20,000 and Area A contributed 3. So it's old surplus though, so that
Right.
would be, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm more just curious than anything. In that grant, which is a substantial grant, good job. Are staffing costs included in that? Sometimes they're not allowed to be. It's just for building or construction. So I'm just curious.
No, I believe this one, it's not eligible. Okay, so as I said, the backstop amount was estimated around $80,000. And so the reason we put down 2 options for this budget was because we have $245,000 in surplus. So we are covered for that backstop. And we've put in an option as our option 1 to reduce taxation or to keep the status quo to continue taxing. This service is to provide grants for the service areas, and I don't believe we've had any in a couple years. Just looking for direction on as presented, option 1, or if we would like to look at option 2.
Director Johnson.
Well, I haven't consulted with Director Adamo, but I'm happy to look at the reduction of taxes.
Okay, thank you, Director Adamo.
And Director Adamo probably feels the same way if it can support Director Johnson. She's got a tough go with things, so I think they would be looking for a reduction in taxes there if there's a possibility.
Okay. Good, thank you. Director Dixon.
Well, now I just have to ask the follow-up question. So if there's a reduction of taxes, which that would be the option I would have put forward for my area, how are staffing costs covered then?
This one is, there's a small recovery for operational costs, but this one's just, it's a $20,000 grant every year. So it's quite a small operating budget.
Good, thank you. Moving forward.
Okay, I'm just going to jump over to the community parks unless we would like to discuss I think we have the bowling alley, the library, the TV, or the community use facility in Yale.
Yes, please, Chair.
Yeah, pardon me. Director Johnson, go ahead.
Yes, if you could, I would like you to just turn the page on myself. If you could present 720 line item, sure. The TV.
Certainly. Okay. So this service is for the Boston Bar North Bend TV system operation. The 2026 financial plan was developed based on the current model of service delivery. So the challenges and risks of this service area or the subscription costs for channels are a main driver behind the cost increases in the recent years. The alternative to increasing tax requisition would be to cut channels. And staff have received feedback from members of the community requesting to end this service. So looking at the financial plan here, this Satellite TV services would be the channel subscriptions that that the service pays for, and it's funded by requisition with some grants.
Director Johnson.
Yes, so I just would like to let everyone know that this is going to be twinned on the election next October. So the community will have the option of voting in favor of keeping the service as it exists or having it discontinued. Okay.
Good.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just jump in too, and just for clarification too, the Legislative Services team is happy to work with yourself and the community on that project in 2026, but just advising that in the event of a vote in next October, to discontinue the service, there is, of course, a process to wind down a service and it wouldn't take effect instantaneously. So we would work through that, what that looks like, and make sure that that information is available to the community when they're making that decision.
Absolutely. And at the meeting that was held, that was addressed, and people that were there were aware that there will be a process, that it's not just going to be unplugged immediately. But yes, that information would need to go to the whole community because certainly not everyone attended, but there was probably over 40 people. So thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Johnson.
Okay, so moving into our community parks. So this service area is for the operations and maintenance of the Dogwood Community Trail and the park in Yale. Key highlights of this plan is the use of savings to offset taxation, as well as operations for new community park in-house. Ongoing initiatives include asset management planning and planning for future parks and trail initiatives. Challenges and risks of this service area are rising costs of labor and supplies, and savings contributions are being assessed to meet future asset replacement. Other considerations are planning for climate change impacts and the understanding the extent of a potential archaeology. Discretionary projects include a portion of a vehicle to support staffing requirements of the new park. This would be funded by surplus or savings. Looking at the financials for this service area, parks maintenance down here, and then that's that capital for a portion of the vehicle. And we've just included this slide, we have done this in previous years, just to show what that looks like with savings over the years. So the requisition dollars are in green and the savings are in blue. So as you can see that we've been decreasing the savings use, increasing the requisition to meet that operational funding. Okay, moving into Area C parks. So this service area is for the operations and maintenance of the community parks at Eagle Point and Lake Erock, Morris Valley Roadside Trail, and the community trails for Elbow Creek and Hemlock. Key highlights of the plan are their operations for 2 new community trails and increased service levels. Ongoing initiatives, again, are that asset management planning and planning for future community parks and trails. Recent challenges, rising costs of labor and supplies, as well as savings contributions to being assessed to meet future asset replacement, and an increasing demand for service. Other considerations are the planning for climate change impacts, potential archaeology, and new projects that are aligned on CWF or grants. So looking at the proposed projects, discretionary list for Eagle Point, Lake Erock, and that portion of the new vehicle. Happy to talk about any of these projects.
Director Wardenberg.
Yeah, thanks for that. A couple questions. Let's see. Well, first of all, I guess the bridge lumber replacement, that maintenance, can that be eligible for grant funding?
You're thinking for CWF?
Yeah.
I'd have to look at Parks trails are a little more of a loose criteria. I'd have to look at this one specifically because of the bridge replacement, but I think that we did potentially think it could fit.
Okay, then I want to eliminate, well, okay, given that, and I want to eliminate the Blackberry, the annual clearing altogether. Hopefully we can, as I discussed with the park staff, if we can get that covered through maybe fire smarter program down at the park, that would be good. If not, right now I would like to eliminate that. And being that there's a couple other changes, I think I'll just send this back to staff for clarity on that grant funding. And I'm not sure how we want to do, if you want to go back to the community works funds. The one other thing, the feasibility for Hemlock Valley Trail. Is that part of this budget, or was that eliminated? That was under community works funds as well. And I see on the line item capital additions at 33,000. I believe it was at 33,000. So there's a couple things that were under the community works funds that were decreased in this budget. One was the Lake Erox Park, I believe at about 80,000, and the Hemlock Valley feasibility for the second phase of the trail up there was eliminated as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, and it might need further research on this. I would like to get that back under the CFF Community Works Funds. If Director Castle, and is he still with us or not?
No, unfortunately, through just here to Director Wardenberg, Director Castle has left the meeting. He did not have any other questions on the remaining budgets and was prepared for the rest of them to go forward as is.
Okay, having said that, can I just defer this back to staff and I'll get clarification on the resolution from Director Castle, who has said that he would give me some of his community works funds, and that would settle the issue with the fire budget. So the fire budget would remain as you have presented. The community works funds, Director Castle has offered some community works funds to cover those projects that I just mentioned in the feasibility study, as well as the additions to the Lake Erock plan, which are Lake Erock Park.
Okay.
Which was been reduced. So in a tune around $100,000, but we'll just clarify numbers as we go forward, or I'll just send it back to staff and we can figure it out. But that's the idea.
Okay, so I just want to pop over to the CWF slides. So for just to touch on the area G CWF, we can certainly talk about what that looks like and bring back the budget in January with that decision made, along with the resolution, as Director Castle will have to make that resolution to trade those funds or to use those funds. But I just wanted to get some clarification. So the Lake Erock Community Park improvement is the one that we reduced from 100 to 10,000.
It was reduced from, I believe, around 80 or 88,000.
80? Oh, sorry, 80.
Yeah.
88?
I want to keep the number at about 100. So if we could keep it simple numbers, as Lake Erock would be 75,000 and $25,000 to the feasibility of the phase 2 of the Hemlock Valley Trail. Should cover most.
And then so we do have the Hemlock Trail, unless it's a different trail, but we have the Hemlock Trail as a current project that's not included on this list because it has started and it's in progress. 110.
Yes.
110,000 was allocated to that one.
And that is the first phase, or sorry, through the chair, Director Wormberg, that is the first phase of the Hemlock Trail, which included design and build out. And then the second phase is the continuation feasibility study to look at furthering it along.
So you're looking to increase this 10 to 100? Yeah. Okay. And then you're happy with that, the previous amount?
Yeah, to the community parks, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, excuse me, Director Davidson.
Just a procedural question. This isn't a service area of particular interest to me. But there's a comment there about portion of the vehicle to support staffing requirements. My understanding was that all things fleet landed in not EA admin, but just general administration, overhead, whatever, which is allocated as appropriate to all service areas that are benefiting from it. So when I see like something that sounds like fleet showing up as a line item on a service area, just wondering procedurally how come and why is this fleet being managed differently than other fleet, et cetera?
Sure. So our fleet is segmented. So our corporate fleet is allocated based on use to the service areas, except for service areas that already have a fleet. So our engineering team has a fleet, and that is allocated to the engineering budgets only. Parks has a fleet that is allocated to the parks budget. So this is a portion of what you see here. And all of the other services that would be considered corporate would take on the cost of the corporate fleet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and coming back to this, just to confirm, you wanted to remove the blackberry clearing from the budget. Okay, so CWF change, blackberry clearing, anything, and then CWF for the bridge lumber?
Yeah, if we can get clarification.
Yeah.
That is covered under that.
Okay.
Might change the number a little bit, but I'm sure Corey's got lots of money.
Okay. And so then looking at the 5-year horizon, those are those 2026 and 2027 projects as well. Okay.
Yeah, Director Wardenberg.
Just for clarification, are we going to go back to, or should we go back to the fire department budget?
But yeah, it's already been set back.
Because that'll remain the same though.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll bring back both in January, and then we can have that the conversation with Dr. Castle to confirm. And then if the 217 budget just comes back in January as is, that's okay. We can speak to that.
Thank you, Director Wardenberg.
Okay, so moving into our area E parks. So this service is for the operation and maintenance of the community playground. Key highlights of the plan are increased operational costs and planning for the future capital replacement. Ongoing initiatives include the Rivers Day cleanup and asset management planning for future replacement savings. Budget risks and challenges are the savings contributions that are being assessed to meet future asset replacement needs, rising costs of labor and supplies, and illegal dumping. Other considerations for this budget are the new projects relying on community works funds or grants, and planning for climate change impacts. Looking at the 5-year horizon, there is a planned play chip replacement for 2028.
Director McElhaney.
Thank you. I had sent some questions about this. So it's quite a small park, and I understand we have costs, but when we're looking at the difference, just looking at my notes here, the tax requisition amount more than doubles over the 5-year period. And the add to surplus amount increases roughly by 18 times. Like, that's pretty significant. And I don't really see a rationale of capital that would do that. I understand that there's been some dumping concerns.
Yeah, I think the transfer to surplus is it's outside of this financial plan, but I believe the intention is to do a playground replacement within the next 15 years. And so that's what that surplus or the transfer to savings would be for. I don't know if Stacy wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, that or David may as well, but that particular, well, all playgrounds are expensive. The playground that is there now is unique as well, so its replacement would be a substantial cost. However, I will say that the replacement of that playground is discretionary. If it came to in the future years, if it was to fail an inspection, for example, we could decommission it. We would necessarily have to replace it. Or if you wanted to, you could rely on grant to at the time to replace it. But if you want guaranteed replacement, then we have to put aside funds.
Thank you. So what about putting some grant money in there now for that? Could we do that instead of, because it's just quite a significant, I mean, it's quite a significant jump. And it doesn't look like a lot in the dollars, but when you look at the increase by percentages, so I'm just wondering if we can look at some other ways to do that. And I'd be happy to help address finding some grant money for like the Rivers Days and things like that. I don't know how, and a question I'd have, so are we currently accessing any grants for Rivers Day to offset our costs for the regional district?
Some of what you're talking about bleeds into the regional parks budget as well. Is that right, David? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, this is a blended space. We're all aware it's Thompson Regional Park.
Can you speak up?
Yes,
Sorry.
Through the chair to Director McConick. This is a blended space where we have a regional park, but inside of that space is a community asset, which is the playground. So there's funding the garbage, the maintenance of the parking lot, all that comes through the regional parks budget, where this budget is very specifically tied to the playground itself and only that.
So this one is just tied to the playground.
That's correct.
Okay. So is it allowable to put in a community works fund money ahead of time if we could start doing that instead of at least part of it? I see we have some in here for 2025. Is it possible to put some more in for maybe 2026 and 27 on that or towards that? I'm not sure what what's allowable.
Are you looking for CWF to fund the playground replacement? Is that what you're?
Yeah, partly, yeah.
Okay, so for CWF, it has to be spent within 5 years, and the replacement is planned for within the next 15 years. So outside of this financial plan, but we can't put in CWF to go into savings. It has to be spent in the 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we could do that in a 2-part process or something, just to soften the taxation, like just for it to go out, but that's something we could maybe talk offside about, maybe looking at that.
There's a possibility of replacing portions of it early, but I don't know if that would work, how early that would be. We would have to be more discussion.
Yeah, I think the alternative is we reduce that transfer to savings and we put forward the budget with wording that the intention is to fund future replacement with grant funding. I think it's outside of that 5 years, so we could put that if.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to short the community because I am all about sustainability. Like that's really how I've been working, but I think with the percentage of increases, I'd like to put it in that we're going to be using. So I would lessen the percentages and like put some away for surplus, maybe half it, and then put the rest towards grant funding, hopefully community works, but whatever is present. I think I'd be more comfortable with that.
Okay, we can refer it back to staff for sure.
Thank you.
Good.
I know it's not big dollars, but
Thank you, Director Makahonic, and turning things back to Ms. Klein. Still got your light on.
Oh, I'm really bad.
Not a big deal.
Okay, and coming to our last community park budget. So the purpose of this service area is for operation and maintenance of the Lakeside Trail. Key highlights of this plan are this use of savings to offset taxation for maintenance and planning for future asset replacement through use of future CWF. Asset management planning for future replacement savings, as well as planning for future parks and trail initiatives. So the budget risks and challenges, savings contributions were reduced at area director request so that future asset replacements rely on community works funds or grants. In addition, there's rising costs of labor, supplies, and infrastructure projects, as well as climate change impacts to be planned for. So looking at the 5-year horizon, so this is where we have that CWF funded for the projects from 2027 to 2030. And showing in the 5-year plan, that contribution is in this line here. Okay. Okay, so moving into the resolution, I'm just going to switch my screen with Lauren here. Okay.
So that's the motion that staff would like us to entertain.
Yes.
Okay, moving. Director Johnson, second. Director Dixon, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries. And the next. Okay. Move Director Dixon, second Director Davidson, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, contrary motion carries.
Okay. Okay, moving into our utilities for sewer. So today we will be going through the Cultus Lake sewer budget, as well as Baker Trails, Popcom, and South Cultus, but happy to go through the other two if you'd like to. So just to touch back on the types of revenue that we have, I see that I'm missing the through agreement, but in this area we would have two different tax types, so requisition and parcel tax, depending on the service area establishment bylaw, as well as user fees that would be billed through utility billing. So going into the North Cultus sewer, the purpose of this service area is for the operations and maintenance of the North Cultus sewer system. Key highlights of this plan are the capital construction of the new wastewater treatment plant was completed in 2025, and the parcel tax is reflective of the updated borrowing costs. User fees are reflective of the operations of the new wastewater treatment plant and savings for future replacement. And we've included the upgrades to the force main for SL1 for Sunnyside Boulevard. Ongoing initiatives include operations in sanitary sewer collection system, wastewater treatment plant operations, sampling and reporting to the Ministry of Environment, regular maintenance and repairs, as well as the connection of the new development in the Parkview neighborhood. Budget risks and challenges for this service area are an asset renewal profile for the new wastewater treatment plant was completed in 2025 and calculated an average annual life cycle investment of $325,000. Proposed contributions to reserve savings are less than this value, but will increase once the debt has been retired. Budget values for the operation and maintenance costs of the new wastewater treatment plant are still largely based on what was developed during the design process. These will be reviewed and adjusted as required in future financial plans. For this service area, the discretionary projects on the list the force main replacement funded by CWF and the land tenure with Cultus Lake Park Board funded by savings. The 5-year horizon includes that operations and maintenance costing review in 2026 and 2027, which will be done by staff. For this service, we have a parcel tax and a user fee. And so this slide just shows that we have the parcel tax impact in the impacts at the back of the slide deck, but this adds in that user fee impact as well. So there's no change for the parcel tax or user fee this year. And you can see that that split now includes a peer user fee and the parcel tax. Any questions?
Yeah, Director Dixon.
I always feel bad because the poor utility guys are always at the end of these meetings, you know. They should be first sometime. Okay, this really is more connected to Area D, but I'll ask it now. So when I read I guess it's budget 447, something along the lines of hopefully the sludge from there can come to the North Cultus system. I think that was the same for Aqueduct. So that's going to reduce their cost. Is there a benefit to the Cultus Lake, or are we just being nice? Do we have a memorandum of understanding for Area D? I'm just curious more than anything, because if they went, I'm assuming to Richmond, there would be a tipping fees or whatever. But so that was my question.
Through the chair to Director Dixon, it is to the benefit of the other service areas, but there would be a cost recovery as well. We just don't know what that expense is going to be in processing that additional activated sludge, so we don't know what expense to or what to charge. That's right.
There we go. That's what we like.
Thank you. I'm fine with this.
Okay, jumping over to Baker Trails. So the Baker Trails service area is for the operations and maintenance of the Baker Trails wastewater treatment plant. This plan follows last year's financial plan. So ongoing initiatives for the treatment plant operation, sampling and reporting, regular maintenance and repairs, and regular pumping of activated sludge. And so here's that comment on to be hauled to the new Cultus facility in 2026. And the budget risks and challenges. So the asset management work done suggested an annual contribution of just under $37,000 per year for savings. Once the debt is retired, the funds will be redirected to capital reserve. So this is speaking to the existing debt. And I believe in 2038. Right. Yeah, 2038 is when the debt will be retired. However, there is a rate reset in 2029. So this is for the debt on the construction of the wastewater treatment plant. So in future financial plans, you will have a note for the 2029 that the debt will be reset with new interest rates. Okay. Moving down into the Popcom sewer system. So this budget is an asset at risk. So this service is for the operations and maintenance of the Popcom sewer system. We are projecting a deficit for 2025, which has to be paid off in 2026. So this is a part of that asset at risk. It's a very lean budget with limited transfers to savings, and there's no new properties to be anticipated to be added for 2026. Ongoing initiatives include the operations of the sanitary sewer collection system, wastewater treatment plant operation, and sampling and reporting to the Ministry of Environment, as well as regular maintenance and repairs and pumping of activated sludge to that Cultus facility. Budget risks and challenges. The asset management work suggested an annual contribution of just under $90,000 in 2024 values for savings. The development in this area has not progressed as fast as forecasted, so that is delaying the contributions to savings. Therefore, that's that budget at risk. Future budgets are dependent on the rate of development, and secondary suites will have a significant impact on system capacity. So other considerations are with the new Cultus wastewater treatment plant, sludge disposal costs are expected to go down. Looking at that asset at risk slide, this is another example of a potential large-scale failure. So $25,000, which would be a $263 impact if we tax for that, or a $57 per taxpayer for emergency debt.
So if I could interrupt, I met with the engineering staff last week regarding this. So there has been a lot of unhappiness about the escalating costs of this. And as I understand it from engineering, the cost this year or in 2026 should be 1635, yet there's this 1815 number. And there seems to be some kind of a misunderstanding as to which number is the correct number.
Yes, I spoke with engineering as well. We're basing our information on the tax file that we have from the province and assessment. So we are going to look into that. It seems like there's some properties that should be included. So I will be connecting with assessment this month to make sure that is sorted out or dig into the bottom of that.
Could you please make me aware of that? Because if that is the number, I am going to be met by torches and pitchforks at the next community meeting. So.
Okay, yeah, we will let you know for sure. And our last sewer system is for the South Cultus sewer. The purpose of this service area is for the operations and maintenance of the South Cultus wastewater treatment plant and Aquadel pump station. So key highlights of the plan are to focus on maintaining operations and upgrade to the screener to improve operations. Ongoing initiatives include the treatment plant operation, sampling and reporting to the ministry, regular maintenance and repairs, and regular pumping of activated sludge to the Cultus facility. Budget challenges. So the asset management work suggested an annual contribution of just under $40,000 per year. This plan comes close to meeting that target. The cost per home will always be challenging for the service area given its limited size. So as we mentioned on the key highlights, there's a discretionary item for the screener upgrades, which is included as funding by CWF. Okay, and on the screen is the resolution for the budgets as presented.
Director Dixon, second Director Wardenberg, discussion.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just for that service area 444, the Morris Valley sewer. Just some clarity on that the two fee types. One's a parcel tax, that's very clear. The other one's a user fee. The user fee is a dollar amount on this, but is it not gauged on water usage? Or how has this figure come about?
Through the chair to Director Wardenberg, it's actually based on the number of homes built within each one of the strata subdivisions. So if you can imagine when the service area was established, they had each subdivision had, however many lots in it and very few homes. So each lot was assessed the parcel tax, but then each strata was billed a user fee based on the number of homes that were built and occupied. And so as those subdivisions have built up, that user fee, the amount of it that's built to each strata increases year over year.
So it's $13 per year per lot? That's the increase.
That's correct. Yeah, $13 increase.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, contrary, the motion carries.
Okay, moving into our final section for the water services. So we will be touching on, we're going to skip over DeRoche, but we're going to go into North Bend, the Yale water system, Dewdney, Lake Yurok, Boston Bar, Area D, and Cultus Lake and Hatzick Capital. Okay, starting with our North Bend water system. So this is for the operations and maintenance of the North Bend water system. This is an asset at risk. Key highlights of the plan focus on maintaining operations and building savings for future replacement. Ongoing initiatives include the operations of the water supply and distribution system, sampling and reporting to Fraser Health, and regular maintenance and repairs. Challenges in this service area are limited savings. So debt was paid off in 2018 and deficit paid back in 2020. The user fee revenues fluctuate greatly from year to year, depending on leakage. The preliminary asset management work suggested an annual contribution of $60,000 per year for savings. And so another one of those potential scenarios, the impact that it would be if that was to occur. Looking at the breakdown between user fees and parcel tax. So the parcel tax increased by $30 this year and a user fee $12. And looking at our financials here. Any questions? I can move on. Okay, moving to our Verde Water Yale. So this is also an asset at risk. This is the service area for maintaining and operating the Yale water system. This plan is focused on maintaining operations. Ongoing initiatives include operations of the water system and distribution system, sampling and reporting to Fraser Health, and regular maintenance and repairs. The service area is aging and has limited savings, therefore budget at risk. Asset management work suggested an annual contribution of just over $60,000 per year. Other considerations for this budget is a high consumption, as well as the service area is funded through a combination of taxation and user fees. This area does not have metering set up, and it's not possible to conduct a water audit without those meters in place. It's also not a chlorinated system. In the future, the operating permit from Fraser Health may mandate chlorination. And another scenario, if there was a large scale failure, what that impact would be to taxpayers. The breakdown between parcel tax and user fees. The parcel tax would be $31 increase this year, and user fees $14 increase. And the financials for this area. If there's any questions, I can answer those.
Oh, Director Adamo, please.
Thanks very much. With it being at risk and having just completed a new liner replacement, which is supposedly adding another 20 years of life to it, what's the actual risk? Is it the piping system that's in the ground that goes from the reservoir to the homes? Is that what's considered the risk? That's one question. And then the other is, do we foresee any opportunities to try to install the metering system so that we can actually do an audit, or can we do an isolated audit in terms of a pressurized, segmented test? If we were able to do that, what would that cost be, or what would be the approximate cost, and would we be able to use grant funds for that kind of a thing to determine where the leaks are, of which there are numerous leaks apparently?
through the chair to Director Adamo. I heard a couple of questions there, so I'll try and answer each of them. So the first was speaking to the risks. What are the risks within the system? We'll say fundamentally the reservoir is still a risk with this system. We did have that refurbishment work completed, and that certainly will extend the expected life. Part of the assessment of the reservoir prior to the refurbishment was a structural assessment. And the structural engineers who looked at it basically said that there are some fundamental risks with that reservoir that still put it at risk. Namely, it isn't designed for seismic events, so that would be one risk. They did give us some operational suggestions and guidelines that would help reduce risk in the event of a seismic event. Additionally, there's quite a bit of AC water main still in the ground. We haven't experienced any issues with that to date, but conventional thinking is that AC water main, will be a problem at some point, and it is something that will eventually need to be dealt with. When we talk about what the recommended savings are for the system, that's 61,000 per year on an annualized basis. That's assuming that you start saving from year one. We're in about year 40 right now, and we have 192,000 in our reserve and 61,000 in our surplus. So we are quite a bit behind the eight ball in terms of like when we actually started to save for the system. So that would be the other way that I would quantify that risk. I also heard a question about the opportunities for metering and whether that's something that we could look at. Options would be either we spend this service area savings to implement that type of program, or we could look at grant opportunities. There was a grant opportunity for metering a couple of years, or about a year ago, that we looked at for some of our other water systems. So certainly the next time that type of opportunity comes around, we could consider it for the Yale water system. We would check in with you on that, of course, before we start working on some sort of application there. And the third question that you had was regarding water audits and leak detection. Yeah, certainly we can do a portion of the leak detection without metering in place, similar to the methodology. There is pressure testing and stuff that we can do, but we can't do a complete water audit without metering in place. And what we often find is that the leaks are on the private side.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I can move on to our next service area. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go back. I had skipped over area G because he's not on the line, but I missed that this is the asset at risk. So I do want to present this one. This is a service area for the Duroche water system, which is an asset at risk. The key highlights of the plan is to focus on maintaining operations. Ongoing initiatives include operations of the water supply and distribution system, reporting to Fraser Health sampling, regular maintenance and repairs. And so this service area is a suggested annual contribution of $56,000 per year. The reason it's at risk is the low reserve contributions, so 14% relative to the suggestion. Considerations for this budget are fire flow at the top end of the North Duroche Road is an ongoing operational issue. The Duroche Creek water license is still in the FARD's name, and the water system is currently not chlorinated as well. Other considerations, this service is funded through a combination of taxes and user fees. Most service connections are set up to be metered, although the billing is flat rate. So in accordance with previous directions, staff have begun reading meters in 2025, although the billing is remaining flat. In the future, staff will report back with proposed fee structures for metered billing. And a water audit is to be conducted. So this is the potential large-scale failure of this service area and the impact to the taxpayers if that was to occur. And the split between parcel tax and user fee. So a 19% or $19 increase for parcel tax and $15 for user fees. And I can answer a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Davidson.
Just a minor request. Is there any way to drag that that zoom bar off to the side so we can see the service area number?
There, sorry.
Thank you.
Good. So this is Director Castle's area. So.
Yeah. Okay, so going down to the Dewdney water system. So this one is for the Dewdney water system, focus on maintaining operations. This one has a new bulk fill station, which is funded by CWF. And annual contribution requirement of $12,000 per year. And so the reason we're presenting this is that discretionary project to install the bulk fill station, which is CWF funded in this financial plan, as shown in the 2026 line. Okay, and moving into Lake Erie for Area C. So this service is for the operations and maintenance of the Lake Erie water system, focused on maintaining operations. Asset management annual contributions should be around $60,000 as recommended for the 2024 value. Considerations for this budget: if it proceeds, the development will eventually be tied into the system, and the developer will be responsible for the additional infrastructure to support their development. This water system is not chlorinated, and in the future could require mandated chlorination. So this project has a backup generator replacement using savings, costing $55,000. And again, the split between parcel tax and user fees, looking at a $24 increase for parcel tax and $7 for user fees. Okay. And I can answer a question. Yeah.
Oh, pardon me, Director Wardenberg. Thank you for waking me up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're almost done. Everybody stay awake. I'm just looking at this. I assuming that the debt is over in 2029 by the looks of this 5-year plan.
Yeah, that's correct. Moving into the Boston Bar water. So this is for operations and maintenance of the Boston Bar water system, focus on maintaining operations and continued leak detection and water main upgrades in 2025 from 2025. Ongoing initiatives include the operations of the water supply and distribution system, as well as sampling and reporting to Fraser Health and regular maintenance and repairs. The preliminary asset management suggestion was an annual contribution of just under $120,000 per year. Once the debt is retired, funds will be redirected to savings. Much of the system is installed in the 70s. It is expected that leakage will be a continuous issue and water audits will be required on a regular basis. And watering restrictions were put in place for the first time ever in 2024 due to drought. Looking at the projects, there's a mandatory project for a water main upgrade, Alder Road and Poplar Road, using savings in CWF. And again, that's split between tax and user fees. And our financial plan showing that funding from CWF and savings in 2026.
I have a question. Director Dixon.
I have a question about this, just curious again. So on your risk and challenges slide, it says it was installed in the 70s and there's a lot of leakage, but then it also said they had to put water restrictions in place because of drought. Was it a combination? Like, would not the leakage also help reduce what water is available?
Through the chair to Director Dixon. Yeah, absolutely. That's what happened. It was a combination of the two, and the thinking was that if we can do what we can do to control leakage, then we'll be more resilient when drought comes.
Okay. So moving on to our last water system. So the Area D water system. This is focused on maintaining operations, but also using a reallocation of surplus savings into a reserve savings, as well as the extension of a water main prior to the development of the Minters Park or the Area D Park. Operations of the water supply and distribution system, as well as sampling and reporting to Fraser Health and regular maintenance and repairs for ongoing initiatives. The suggested annual contributions are $222,000 using last or 2024 value for savings. Considerations for this area is the continued growth of the area. So it's increasing the tax base, but it's used much of the system's capacity. A new reservoir will be required as the area further develops. The timing of the new reservoir now projects to be beyond the timeframe of this financial plan, which was originally planned for 2025. So on the screen is that water main extension costing $180,000 funded by savings. And the breakdown between requisition and our user fees. And this, you can see the transfer of surplus into reserve in that year, as well as the CW or the savings for the project.
So we have a large partner in this service area in the form of First Nations. So do we see, while user fees keep increasing for the electoral area residents, how about for the First Nations people? Do we have ongoing discussions with them?
Through the chair to Director Dickey, yeah, certainly the user fees that we charge to Sham First Nation do increase on an annual basis.
So it's attached to a CPI, or
it was a 5-year agreement, and what we did is we had the annual rate increase based on the 5-year financial plan at the time when we signed the agreement.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, so just going into two of our water capital service areas. So starting with Cultus Lake, the purpose is for debt repayment for the funds borrowed to upgrade the Area H integrated water system. So just to highlight that the interest rate will be reset in 2028 and 2029. Minor capital works associated with the water integration project are in this service area. And so the discretionary project here is the Lakeshore Drive infrastructure replacement planning using savings estimated $30,000. And our last service area is our Hatzick or Sylvester Water Capital service area. I just wanted to bring this one forward because we had a debt reset in 2025, but we didn't know the rate at the time. So now that we do, I brought forward this financial plan showing that it's a 5-year debt reset. So it will expire in 2030 to reset again. So we've managed to use the surplus that we had taken a little bit extra last year to put towards the 5 years. Over the 5 years. Okay. And if there is no further service areas that you'd like me to go through?
It's the question on 491.
Yep.
So ongoing initiatives, I'm not seeing a mention of the water model. And I know it's mentioned on the work plan with completion date of end of this year. I just wanted to confirm that we're on track.
Through the chair to Director Davidson, yeah, I can answer that. It is on track. Monitoring is ongoing, and staff are going to be looking at issuing that RFP in the next, we'll say, month or two for the model development. the reason why you don't see it on the 4981 budget is because it's paid for by Community Works, but it's actually the funds actually flow through the 103 budget, which is the engineering and utilities administration budget. And just the reason for that is because much of the monitoring is for within the Miracle Valley aquifer area, so kind of outside of the Housing Prairie water system. So even though they're adjacent and related, we're running those funds flow through a different budget.
So again, this looks like it's out of alignment with the work plan that was presented. There's a line in there about to develop a groundwater model for the Miracle Valley aquifer with a completion date of end of this year. So realistically, where is it gonna land?
We'll say realistically, it's on the docket for 2026. An end date? Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna, we'll get into this at EASC about the secondary suite multiple unit thing, but you know, from my expectations were that we're gonna have a groundwater model. I mean, what you're saying just contradicts what's in the work plan. So I'm a little bit concerned about it, that it's gone back to 2026 sometime, as opposed to a work plan that says end of this year, with no communication about it other than me checking in. Anyway, another subject, another time. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other water services that you'd like to go through, or? Okay.
It appears not. Yeah.
Okay, so coming to the resolution then.
So moved.
Just noting that we just have to change the resolution. We missed one service area. So just give us one moment. Okay, there we go. Sorry, we were just missing one service area, but it's been added now.
So we're good to go. Motion. Move Director Wardenberg, second Director Johnson. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor. Contrary, motion carries.
And that brings us to the end of our presentation, Chair Dickey. So looking at our agenda, we'd be looking for a motion to adjourn the open meeting.
So am I wrong? I thought there were a couple of budgets of Director Adamo's that we set aside because he booked out for a few minutes.
So we did circle back to the budget in the first section of General Government Services, and I confirmed with Director Adamo that he did not intend to refer back any of those fire budgets for that period of time. So everything is fine to move forward.
Good, thank you. So we will move forward, and you're looking for adjournment of
A
open?
motion to adjourn the open meeting.
Motion, move Director Johnson, second Director Dixon. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carried.